change after this incident?
This thing has sent shockwaves throughout the political world. I was on the floor of the convention speaking with the Republican Party chairman, Michael Whatley, when this news broke. Saw him whisked away by an aide on the phone trying to figure out what was happening. And obviously, shockwaves not just here in Milwaukee, where the political world, at least the Republican part of the political world, is gathering for this convention that is set to kick off officially at 2 o'clock on Monday, but also over on the Democratic side. We are told, Whit, that the Biden campaign has paused all outbound communications, and they're working to pull down all of their political ads, effectively putting this intensely fought, heavily funded, very negative presidential campaign, at least for the moment, on hold in the wake of this incident. And you heard, President Biden condemn what happened. I thought it was interesting to hear him refer a couple of times to President Trump, somebody he has clashed with as mightily as any two political figures in our history have clashed, calling him Donald and saying he tried to get a hold of Donald and he hopes to speak to him, and saying that we all have to condemn what happens. And that is what is happening. We are seeing statements from political leaders across the political spectrum, not just condemning what is an apparent or being investigated as an apparent political assassination attempt, but calling for calm and saying that political violence of any kind, certainly not like this, has no place in American politics. One of those briefed on this and putting out a statement is the Speaker of the House, third in line of presidential succession, Mike Johnson, who says he's been briefed by law enforcement and says this horrific act of political violence at a political campaign rally has no place in this country and should be unanimously and forcefully condemned. And that is exactly what is happening. We're hearing from former President Obama, former President Clinton. Obviously, you just heard from President Biden. And I think quite movingly from a former congresswoman named Gabby Giffords, who herself was severely wounded in political violence at a campaign event of hers in Arizona. Gabby Giffords putting out a statement saying, political violence is terrifying. I know. I'm holding former President Trump and all those affected by today's indefensible act of violence in my heart. Political violence is un-American and never acceptable, never. A view that is being uniformly expressed across the political spectrum and obviously beyond the political world.
And obviously, John, something we also heard from the witnesses who were there tonight and witnessed this chaos and the bloodshed, asking for prayers, not only for former President Trump, but for the bystanders, or at least one who may have been killed in this incident. John, thank you. Stand by. We'll come back to you as the developments persist throughout the night. But I want to go back to Mary Bruce at the White House. Mary, just getting some more information before I come to you, because we're also told now that FBI personnel are on the scene in Butler, Pennsylvania. The FBI will work jointly with the U.S. Secret Service as the investigation moves forward. And Mary, I just wanted to pick up with you on something that John noted, too, about Biden reaching out, trying to speak with former President Donald Trump. These are two men who do not speak to each other. I mean, they hardly even acknowledged each other in that debate a couple of weeks ago. So the president trying to reach out, the former president trying to at least, give as much of a perception of unity in this moment of tragedy in America.
Yeah, and you heard with the president there essentially arguing that now is not a time for politics, that this is a moment where the country has to unite. You heard the president saying there is no place in America for this type of violence. And as John noted, yes, it is certainly unusual to hear President Biden refer to Donald Trump by his first name. And yes, we know that he tried to reach out to him. We don't know why he wasn't able to get a hold of him, but the president says he's going to continue to try. And this, you can't understate how much it has completely and totally upended this campaign, this race, this moment that we are in America. We were just days away from the Republican National Convention. We have seen, of course, a ratcheting up of divisive rhetoric in this country. We were at a point where you were hearing, as Joe Biden has been facing a lot of doubts from those within his party about the future of his own candidacy in this race. He has been urged by others to take the fight to Donald Trump more forcefully, to outline more forcefully the case in this race. All of that now coming to a halt. The campaign announcing that they are trying to pull down. They are going to be pulling down their ads off of the airwaves. That this is a moment where instead of ramping up, you are having the campaigns hit the pause button completely. Now, what will that mean? How will that change this race? Will it change the way the two parties talk about each other going forward? Will it actually bring the country together? All huge questions and things that remain to be seen in the coming days. And just one more thing, Whit. I do think it was interesting. The president there was asked if he thought this was an assassination attempt. He said, I have an opinion, but I don't have any facts, echoing what I think many Americans are thinking right now.
Absolutely. Mary Bruce, thank you so much. I do want to bring in District Attorney Richard Goldinger from Butler County, Pennsylvania. Richard, thank you so much for your time. We appreciate it. We've been reporting this information that you gave to some of our team here at ABC News about the shooter being dead and at least one bystander, possibly a second, also killed. What more can you tell us about this incident?
Well, I'm sorry to be talking to you under these circumstances, but yeah, I can confirm that the shooter is dead, and we have one spectator who did pass away as a result of this incident. The second individual that was removed from the scene is in what I would say serious condition. I don't know their condition at this point, but we do have at least two spectators that sustained injuries, or obviously the first one passed away from the shooter.
Forgive me, just to confirm, so the shooter is dead. You noted that, but earlier we reported possibly two spectators were killed. So now you're saying, just to clarify, one was shot and killed, another one sustained serious injuries. Their condition at this point, unknown?
That is correct, yes.
Do we know anything about this shooter?
At this point, no.
Is it a man?
I don't even know if it's male or female, to be honest with you. So
okay, so we don't know if it was male or female. Was the shooter? Is it believed that the shooter was actually in the venue, or fired the shots from outside?
I can confirm the shooter was not within the venue. The shooter was on the roof of a building that was adjacent to the venue, and so they would not have had to go through the security process of entering the rally and be subject to the search and everything.
Forgive me, I was just getting some information in my ear as you were speaking. So the shooter not in the venue, on the roof adjacent to the venue. So is it believed then that some of these other shots that we heard witnesses describe, that was law enforcement returning fire? Was it law enforcement who took the shooter out?
That I can't confirm.
That's a yes?
No, I can't confirm that.
Okay, so it's not clear how the shooter died.
Correct. At this point, we don't know. I don't know. How about that? I don't know at this point.
Fair enough. I understand. And forgive me, I know it's a fluid situation and information is coming in piece by piece.
Extremely, yes.
Richard, just your take in general. This is obviously a tragic moment in this country. I mean, not only do we have this act of political violence, we have bystanders, people out there just exercising their right to support a candidate, potentially shot and killed. What are you feeling at this time?
Well, I mean, it's terrible. First of all, I'm embarrassed for my community that this happened here. I am disgusted and sad that somebody actually lost their life as a result of this. And, unfortunately, it appears to be just almost, I don't want to say a microcosm, but the state of our country, where we are right now and how divided we are, and somebody would resort to something like this to, well, I don't know the motives, but potentially affect a presidential election. And it's really sad. we need to. I agree with President Biden. We need to come together. We need to unite because of this, and I hope that maybe something bad like this happening, good can come of it after the fact.
Yes, let's all hope that that could be the case, and perhaps this country could have a moment of unity in what has been a very divisive time, and only getting painful by the minute here as we get more details about what happened. I do want to ask you about the bystanders. Do we know any information about them, where they were seated during this event?
I don't have that information at this point. I'm going to guess that they were probably seated behind President Trump, based on the whole thing. But I don't know. I shouldn't even speculate.
Understood. Again, Richard Goldinger, we truly appreciate you taking the time this evening, and we're wishing the very best. Our hearts go out to you and your entire community as you try to build back from this tragedy. Thank you again. I want to go to, let's go back to Martha Raddatz in Washington. Martha, I know that you've been talking to not only law enforcement sources, political sources, but also folks in the military who were describing what they heard with those gunshots. We got some more information from the district attorney there. The suspect who was shot and killed, and we're not sure how, we're careful to, to point that out, was on a rooftop adjacent to the venue. What does that tell you, and what's the reaction you're getting from your sources?
Well, it certainly was a ways away from President Trump, and that in the beginning, when I started talking to people who were familiar with weapons and who heard that gunfire on the tape, said they were certain it was probably a ways away from the actual venue outside the security zone, and it sounds like that has proven to be true. There were several shots you could hear, and they were very distinct, at least 2 or 3, possibly more shots, and we don't know yet whether we were hearing not just the shooter, but those who then took out the shooter. But when I look at this video, and we've all looked at it over and over, and you see President Trump get up and put that fist in the air. We've now heard from his family. We now have heard that former President Trump is okay. But this is an incredibly sobering moment for former President Trump, for his family, and for the country. There is always a possibility something can go wrong. He is surrounded by security doing the best job they possibly can, the Secret Service, but these things can happen. And when he goes out there again, he is going to be thinking of this, whether he keeps that fist in the air, whether you can't keep him down. This is something that has got to be in the back of your mind. Back in 2016, just 4 days before the election back there, he was taken off the stage by Secret Service when someone shouted gun. There wasn't a gun. He was okay. Nothing happened. But even that, I mean, you can see that moment of fear in someone's eyes, and they have a right to be afraid in something like this. I also think what we're going to have to see in the coming days, and we talk about this divided country, we talk about this heinous act, is who this shooter is, what the motive actually was, where they come from, why they did this. This will be pivotal in how the country reacts, how former President Trump's supporters act. This is something we really have to keep our eyes on in the coming days. And not to mention the serious questions about security. I know you and many of us have been to these Trump rallies before, and you go through so much security to get inside the venue, and the metal detectors, and they check your bags and everything. There are prohibited items, things you cannot bring inside. But to get this information from the DA now that the suspect was on top of a roof adjacent to the venue, that raises serious questions about whether something, a potential threat, was overlooked. Well, I think, again, you cannot protect someone from everybody. There are ways to get to people. I think on the venue itself, obviously, and we've all been there, and they go through the magnetometer. But if you are a long way away and you have a weapon, I know certainly they have probably snipers positioned in certain places, but I've been to events too and think, oh, wow, look at that building over there. Someone could get up there. I hope they have somebody there. They are not in every single spot at every single single rally. And that's what people take advantage of. I mean, I think the Secret Service would be the first to say we do our absolute best. We lock down what we can, but people keep trying, and they keep trying to get in. But we will learn more on that, too. Any kind of investigation going forward, which will take weeks, months, probably years, how this happened.
Yes, this is just the very beginning. Martha Raddatz, thank you so much. I do want to go back to another witness here, Stephen Lasko, who was at the Trump rally. Stephen, if you can hear me, I understand you were only about 100 feet away from the former president. Describe what you saw and what you heard.
About 100 feet away from him, could see his face. He was right there talking, having a good time. And, you heard one shot, two shot. It sounded like, bang, nothing crazy. And then you heard maybe three or four more. And that's when everyone got quiet, started panicking. Trump dropped right to the floor. I guess Secret Service jumped on top of him and shielded him. But, as soon as everyone in the crowd figured out what was going on, we all ducked, and my buddies just jumped on top of me, piled on top of me. And we had no idea what was going on. You're in total shock. You're shook, and, you can't feel your legs. But we were trying to decide if we wanted to get up and run, and we had really no idea what to do. And next thing you know, you see bullets, or you hear bullets flying, and I believe a bullet hit the hydraulic lift that was holding up the speakers, and that thing almost collapsed. There was hydraulic fluid and water spitting everywhere all over the crowd. And then before you know it, everyone just gets up and starts running. But
and
Trump
Stephen,
did stand.
Oh, forgive me. I'm sorry. There's a little bit of a delay, but on that note about everybody getting up and running, we're actually showing video that you shot on your cell phone. And this is the moment with people running out of the venue. Describe what that was like, and when were you actually able to get out?
It was pretty stressful. I'm looking around trying to make sure all my buddies who came with me were with me. And, it took probably a good 10 minutes to get out of there, to get out of the whole area. And, before you know it, there's ATVs and UTVs flying and ambulances and all that kind of stuff. And we're trying to figure out how to get out of there and get home. But we made it. And when we walked out to the road, they had, police blocking everything off. And we actually found out where the building was that the shooter was shooting from. They had it all taped off. I guess it was like an agricultural warehouse, something like that. So, it was pretty scary. It's like you're in the movies.
Stephen, forgive me again. I'm sorry. There's a little bit of a delay with the connection, but did you say that you were able to see the building that the shooter was allegedly perched on top of here? You said it was taped off by law enforcement. What did it look like?
It was like a kind of like an airplane hangar, maybe, like a warehouse for agricultural equipment, I guess. ARC, AGC, something like that on the side. But once we were out, maybe 30, 40 minutes after, they were taping it off, investigating it. They had the dogs going and all that stuff. But there was traffic jams everywhere. It was kind of hard to.
How far away was that area from where the former president was standing?
Maybe 300, 400 yards, maybe less, honestly.
And Stephen, when you hear that people who were there in the crowd with you, other bystanders, at least one, maybe more, were killed, how does that make you feel?
Honestly, still kind of numb to it. It's hard to process all this. Your heart rate is through the roof, but best wishes for their family, and they were supporting the country that they love. And in the meantime, it's definitely sad, and it's heartbreaking, honestly.
And Stephen, we've been hearing from people on both sides of the aisle, Republicans, Democrats, independent candidate, RFK Jr., and all with the same sentiment, condemning political violence, saying there's no place in this country for something like this. And I just wonder, from your perspective, too, you're out there, you're exercising your right to support a candidate. What message do you have for people out there? Because the country is at this political boiling point. There's so much division and anger and hatred right now from one side and the other. What would you like to tell people?
At the end of the day, whether you're on the left, the right, the center, or you don't believe in politics at all, we all still put our pants on in the morning. We all breathe the air and go to work, and a lot of these issues, in 10 years, no one even thinks about them or cares about them. So we're all people at the end of the day, and it's not worth taking someone's life over political beliefs or whatever. It's just senseless.
Well, Stephen, I think many people would agree with those words. Thank you so much for your time. Thanks for sharing that video, and we're so glad and thankful that you and the people you were there with are doing okay. Thanks again.
Of course, and as Kelly Clarkson says, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger.
Well, let's hope that that's what happens in this country from here forward. The country definitely needs a moment of healing as we work closer and closer to Election Day. Stephen, thank you again. Let's go back to Rachel Scott. I believe she's still there in Pennsylvania. She was at this event, and Rachel, you've been speaking with witnesses. And who are you with right now?
Yeah, I'm with a woman named Erin. You were in the very first row in the middle seat, you told me. What did you see? What did you witness?
I was in the first row, and I was in the middle. I was directly in front of President Trump. So I saw him come on the stage, and it was maybe about 3 or 4 minutes. Everybody, all the photographers saw him come in. They all cleared away. He started speaking, and then we heard pound, pound, pop, pop, pop. In everybody's mind, it was like 4th of July. Somebody must have been still doing firecrackers. Then I saw the 4 Secret Service jump up and immediately push him to the ground. Then the news people that were around him, they all fell to the ground. There was 4 of them down there, and then we all stood up. None of us moved. We wanted to protect President Trump. Sorry, helicopter's landing. Then I saw the gentlemen who wear the guns in the black. They came on and they said, okay, clear right, clear left. On 3, we're going to lift them. So they lifted President Trump up, and he said, I got to get my shoes. His shoes must have fallen off when they pushed him down. I saw the red blood on his right cheek. Then when he turned, I saw the ear from the top to the bottom with red.
Erin, I'm just going to have the camera turn really quickly because we are seeing a helicopter landing. For everyone that is watching at home, this is obviously still an active crime scene where we are all standing right now. We are just yards away from where this rally was taking place. We're seeing a helicopter touchdown. We've obviously seen more and more police presence in the last hour following these events that occurred. And there are still supporters that are still trying to leave this area. You are one of them. There were hundreds of people here, and so the parking lots were very full. There was a line to get out, and so there's a little bit of a traffic jam also as well. So you described those moments. You heard the pop, pop, pop. Everyone went down for cover. How are you feeling? How are you processing this?
Well, everybody in the first row, nobody went down to the ground. They all stood up. They wanted to protect the president. All we were concerned about was him. And then kind of the Secret Service, when he got up and got into the vehicle, they told us to sit and stay seated because there was things going on. And from what I hear, there was possibly 2 shooters. There's a gentleman here that has a picture of one of the shooters that was rolled off of a building. And he was shot by the sharpshooters that were behind Trump. And I saw a gentleman leave from the left stands, and he had red blood all down his shirt. He wasn't hit, but I think he was around somebody who was. So just picking up little bits of things. We're all in shock because we never expected this. I mean, it's a beautiful rally, a beautiful night. I don't know. If no one's ever been to a Trump rally, it's very congenial. People look out for each other. It just seems like you don't see any fights and you don't see any animosity and you don't see too much. They're all pretty much focused on the president. And then with this to happen, it's just stressful. It's just sad. Very sad.
This is an open fairground where we are standing here. It was a very hot day. People were coming in with their water bottles. As you said, there was this sense of sort of joy, excitement to see the former president. All of this unfolded within minutes of him taking the stage.
I don't think it was 3 to 4 minutes, I would say. He hardly got a chance to do his, waving at everybody and welcome and maybe a couple words on the teleprompter. But some people tell me that they think one of the shots hit the teleprompter and that could have made him with the cheek.
Interesting. Yeah, there's a lot of unconfirmed reports still out there. We're also sorting through this.
He did leave the stage on his own. He walked down the steps. I saw that. And then he put his right hand up and fist up and said, "Stay strong, everyone." And he kind of turned like he was exiting. He was making sure that all those people like us that were standing up knew that he was okay.
Well, we so appreciate you taking the time, and I know you were waiting to clear out from this area as well.
Everybody's just praying for our president. That's how everybody is here. So thank you.
We're so happy that you are safe. Please get home safe. Again, that is just one of the many witnesses that we've been talking to here that are leaving these fairgrounds now after this incident occurred. As you can tell, still a little shaken up there, still processing what happened, replaying those events in our minds for what we all heard, that sound of the pop, 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 people rushing, taking cover, seeing the former president being rushed off the stage, and then ultimately all of us being rushed out of this area. Many members that were inside, many of the Trump supporters are still waiting to leave here with.
Yeah, you get the sense as we've been talking to them one after another, many still in shock. I mean, how do you process such a thing, right? Something you don't expect like this act of violence. Rachel Scott Forrest, once again, thank you so much. I do want to bring in John David Longo, the mayor of Slippery Rock, who was with former President Trump right before the rally. Mayor, if you can hear me, where were you when the shots rang out?
I was just left of the stage, sir. So to the right of the president, I was front row there, right on the barrier when the shots rang out, and still trying to piece that together. You know, I heard those sounds, and immediately I thought I knew what I heard, but I didn't want to believe it. I thought for sure it might have been a firecracker or a gag, but by the time I heard the second one, my ears recognized the sound, and it's just a very sad situation to be in. I put my wife down to the ground and covered her up, and everybody around us, we're making sure that everybody was low to the ground and staying still and out of the way so that our law enforcement officers and Secret Service could understand the situation while I also was scanning because we weren't quite sure exactly at that time where the fire was coming from.
And forgive me, Mayor, I couldn't hear you for a second. Did you say that as you were hearing the gunshots and everybody dove to the ground, that you dove down and tried to cover up your wife?
I did. I tried to cover up my pregnant wife. We just found out we were expecting a few weeks ago, and I came here with her and my family today to come and bring them to hear President Trump speak. And my wife and I were blessed enough to be able to meet the president 15 to 20 minutes before he took the stage and had a pleasant conversation with him, and it was all smiles. And of course, that was stolen from us when this maniac decided to do what he did. And unfortunately, somebody in the bleachers right behind us was murdered by this monster.
And what's your reaction to that, to learn that at least one person lost their life today who was just there at the same rally that you were attending?
It's sad does not describe, what that feeling is. This individual came here likely with a smile on their face, looking for hope and inspiration, looking to hear from President Trump in a place that is deep in the territory of blood red Trump country, and he did not get to leave here today with his life, and now his loved ones are probably wondering just how it is that something like this could have been possible.
Mayor John David Longo from Slippery Rock, thank you so much for your time, and we're thankful that you and your family are okay tonight.
Thank you. Thank you.
Let's turn now to Paul Eckloff, former Secret Service for both former President Trump and for Obama. Paul, talk to me about this investigation as it stands now. Obviously, we've had reports that the Secret Service, other law enforcement agencies are treating this as an attempted assassination unless they hear otherwise. How is an investigation like this pursued from here on?
Yes, sir. These cases are exactly what the Secret Service trains day in and day out for. Unfortunately, it puts into sharp focus that the Secret Service as we know it today exists due to a history of political violence in this country, and they work tirelessly every day to prevent anything but the peaceful transfer of power. In this case, the Secret Service prepares for these contingencies by having agents in place for crime scene prevention, and they perform what's known as an interim federal presence before the FBI conducts the actual investigation on an assassination attempt.
Paul, thank you so much. Forgive me. Stand by for a moment because we're just getting new information right now. I want to go back to John Carl in Milwaukee. John, you're learning more from Trump himself.
Trump, I'm going to read it to you in its entirety, Whit. He says, I want to thank the United States Secret Service and all of law enforcement for their rapid response on the shooting that just took place in Butler, Pennsylvania. Most importantly, I want to extend my condolences to the family of the person at the rally who was killed and also to the family of another person that was badly injured. It is incredible that such an act can take place in our country. Nothing is known. This is Donald Trump saying nothing is known at the time about the shooter who is now dead. And here's key new information in this statement from Donald Trump. I was shot with a bullet that pierced the upper part of my right ear. I knew immediately that something was wrong in that I heard a whizzing sound, shots, and immediately felt the bullet ripping through the skin. Much bleeding took place, so I realized what was happening, and then he ends it, God bless America. So a statement from Donald Trump that he has posted on social media saying that he was shot in the right ear by one of the bullets as they went by, much bleeding, and expressing his condolences to somebody at the rally who was killed, another person that was injured. That statement from Donald Trump.
And now, John, as you've been with us for hours now, it's the puzzle pieces are starting to come together, at least in terms of the event today and what happened. You know, we don't have the who and the why yet, but we're starting to get the how and how this all played out tonight, because we saw earlier those images of the former president with the blood trickling down the right side of his face. We saw him flinching as he was speaking when the shots first rang out, and then reaching for his right ear. And then now that confirmation from the former president himself. And John, I know that politics isn't really at the center of the conversation in this moment, but I can't help but just point out that you're standing in Milwaukee, you know, at the headquarters of what is supposed to be the Republican National Convention this week, major events that were supposed to take place. How do you expect that not only the Trump campaign, but the Biden campaign will then respond to all of this? What do the next few days and weeks look like on the campaign trail?
I mean, what we're seeing immediately is a pause to the political, to this very heightened stage of this campaign. The Biden campaign has said that they have they've closed off all outbound communication. They're attempting to take down their television advertising across the country right now. We've seen statements come in from across the political spectrum. Former presidents, George W. Bush, Barack Obama, Bill Clinton, the current president, Joe Biden, who we've heard from both in a statement and in a live statement to the country, condemning what has happened, offering their well wishes, prayers for Donald Trump and for those who were at his rally. We're seeing this from people who are Trump's allies, from those who are adamantly opposed to him. But there's something else we're seeing that I have to say. We're already seeing some very divisive rhetoric in an attempt to politicize what has been roundly condemned by everybody. You have seen some of the president's allies suggest that Joe Biden himself bears responsibility because of the rhetoric that we've seen in this campaign. We saw a statement to that extent coming from J.D. Vance, one of those who's waiting right now to find out if he's going to be Donald Trump's running mate. We've seen a member of Congress say much the same, except directly pinning the blame on President Biden. So for now, across the political spectrum, a pause, universal condemnation, but the early indications are that that's just not going to last very long. It could get ugly very soon. There should be a moment where the country has a wake-up call that the hateful rhetoric that we have seen across the political spectrum is simply dangerous. We know death threats have become a matter of due course for political figures in this campaign. Even before this campaign, this should be a time for people to say it's time to step back, make it clear that violence has absolutely no place in American politics. But I think what you're also going to see is, while this campaign is, for the moment, in a state of shock and pause, it's a campaign that seems like it is very well going to come back with a vengeance.
And on that point, this is going to be a huge test, no matter how you slice it in this country. Is this going to be a moment of unity at some point, Or is this a moment when people just flee back to their tribal corners, and start throwing rocks at each other again? That is going to be a major test for this country to wait and see what happens in the days to come. John Karl for us, thank you so much for that. I do want to bring also on that note, we have Rick Klein, our political director for ABC News, and our D.C. bureau chief joining us right now on camera. And Rick, pick up on some of these notes that we're getting from John Karl and just some of the reaction that you're getting tonight.
Yeah, just in the immediate term, Whit, I'm just a couple hundred yards away from the forum where this convention was set to go. The balloons are literally up in the rafters. There's a festive atmosphere that was here in Milwaukee just a few hours ago. All of that, needless to say, is gone. There are social events that have been canceled for tonight. No convention business as of now has been impacted. No changes to the convention that's set to start on Monday. But it has definitely changed the mood, the tone, the tenor of the campaign. The news from the Biden campaign that they have pulled all of their advertising and paused their campaign communication. And as John referenced, some very ugly things that are being said just in terms of statements right now. A lot of accusations going about and a lot of heated rhetoric.
panicked and confused as Secret Service agents rush us out of this area and back to our cars.
Tonight, the crowd still in disbelief.
Tell me what you saw and what you heard. You said that you heard the popping sounds and you got down?
Sounds. At first you think like maybe firecrackers, but it continued, and then somebody yelled, "Get down." We got down, and we huddled and we started praying.
Tonight, local officials telling ABC News those sounds were in fact gunshots, live rounds fired from outside the security perimeter. This is being investigated as an attempted assassination. And tonight, the local district attorney telling ABC News at least one person is dead and the shooter is dead as well. Tonight, President Biden addressing the nation.
I have tried to get a hold of Donald. He's with his doctors. Apparently he's doing well. I plan on talking to them shortly, I hope, when I get back to the telephone. Look, there's no place in America for this kind of violence. It's sick. It's sick. It's one of the reasons why we have to unite this country. We cannot allow for this to be happening. We cannot be like this. We cannot condone this. But the idea that there's political violence or violence in America like this is just unheard of. It's just not appropriate. And everybody must condemn it.
Those words from President Biden tonight saying everyone must condemn it, something that we've been hearing from politicians on both sides of the aisle. And Rachel Scott is back with us now. Rachel, you've been here since the beginning tonight. We were talking to each other during World News as the rally was just getting underway, and you've been getting these horrific stories from witnesses, and you're with another one tonight.
Yeah, we're with another group of witnesses that saw what happened. I will tell you, hours ago, this area right here was filled with Trump supporters eager, waiting to go inside of that rally. Right now, tonight, this is an area where Trump supporters are gathering. They're left with shock about what happened. Tell me what you saw inside.
Yeah, I was just about like 30 feet from Trump, and then I saw the people that had been shot. And they were bringing them down in the stands right above me, and I just didn't want to get down. I just kept standing. But I saw the man that was hit in the head, and there was a lot of blood, and I knew there was no way he was going to survive that. And then there were two of them that they brought down, but it was like real chaos and chaotic. But I didn't get down, and so it was very interesting. We were just right there, about 40.
What was going through your mind as you saw that person with tons of blood on them?
Yeah, at first I was thinking, I thought different thoughts, like maybe this was the shooter and then he committed suicide, or maybe someone shot him. That's what my first thoughts were. I didn't think about just like someone that was in the stands. Yeah, that's what I thought.
And now knowing that this is someone that was in the stands, how are you processing this?
No, I think we're all in shock. Yeah, we're numb. That this happened.
Can I say, when I heard this going on, I thought it was a firecracker. Just like with Kennedy, people thought it was a firecracker. And I looked, we were 20 yards away from Trump, and then we were 20 yards away from where I thought it was a firecracker, but then now I'm thinking maybe those were bullets that were going over our head. Yeah. And then they were saying, get down, get down, get down. I just wasn't processing. It took me like 2 minutes, and I finally hit the deck. But I think it's just like you're in shock. And how did the guy get the gun in there? How did he get the gun?
Or it might have been a sniper.
Yeah. Well, let me ask you this, because is this your first Trump rally?
No.
So I've covered a number of Trump rallies. I've been to almost every single Trump rally this cycle. You've been to a number as well. You're fully aware of the security precautions. Trump supporters, as they're making their way in, they have to go through magnetometers. Your bags are searched. Your pockets are searched as well. And so any area where you're around the former president, there is a sense of safety. Yeah. And so to have this occur, what was going through your mind as you heard gunfire, get down, get down?
I think first I was in shock, but I do think I'm drawn to some of this I tried out for the Secret Service. I passed everything, but then they said, take your glasses off. And that was the end of it. So my whole life would have been changed, but I couldn't see. But I guess I like to be where the action is in some ways. So, but I mean, not this, obviously this is just horrible, just horrifying. But
Trump survived. That's good. It would have been horrible news, worse news if he had been killed. So that's good. At least we had that. But yeah, we're all in shock. Yeah, it's really something. I just got done saying every generation thinks, well, we're past that. We're not going to have any more assassination attempts, and then you have something else. And maybe that's really hard to stop.
I thought it was firecrackers.
Yeah, you thought it was firecrackers. Yeah, I mean, so many people did. Initially, when that first happened, there was a lot of confusion for everyone that was inside of that fairground near. We heard the pop, 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 pop sounds. We heard shouts of gunfire, but we did not know for sure. We were just all told to get down. And then from my understanding, it was also law enforcement that told you all to just stay down, even though the former president was already escorted to make sure that they had the situation under control.
They kept saying, stay down, but then curiosity overcame me. After about 5 minutes, I stood up, and there were like 6 or 7 men with AR-15s or whatever, whether they AK-47s or AR-15s, and they were just like hawks. They were looking around, staring at everybody, and their guns ready, and one guy looked kind of nervous. I mean, it was just, I was just kept thinking that we're going to be a part of history here, so. But it's just it's
I felt
horrible.
bad for that guy that was shot because there was so much blood and things. So, he was right above me, so I thought, oh, there's no way he survived that. But, what a day.
A hard thing to witness, and I so appreciate you all taking the time to speak with me, and I'm glad that all of you are safe. Please get home safe. Again, with just this sense of disbelief, trying to process, replaying those events over and over in your head, that's what everyone here that was inside of that Trump rally is still having to contend with as they process the moments that happened, those frantic and chaotic moments of what they witnessed inside with.
Yeah, and I can't help but think there's going to be a lot of trauma after this event for all of those witnesses who were there, watched this unfold before their very eyes, and also knowing that one of their fellow supporters, somebody who was just there, part of the rally, at least one person lost their life today. Rachel Scott, and to you, we can't thank you enough for all your reporting throughout the evening. Stand by, we'll come back to you if news develops. But let's bring in John Cohen tonight, ABC News contributor, former FBI. John, there are so many questions about what happens now with this investigation. Take us through this process. Where do they begin?
Well, the first thing they're going to do is they're going to identify the suspect. They're going to try to determine by evaluating their social media, their communications, their interactions with other people that they are associates with, whether this was an act of a lone offender or whether it was part of a broader conspiracy. They're also going to be looking for any type of follow-on events. Part of the danger in a situation like this is that people may view this as either an act to be replicated or may seek to respond. So law enforcement very quickly across the country, quite frankly, is going to be looking at trying to prevent any residual events following this incident.
John, thank you very much. And we do know that the FBI is joining the Secret Service in this investigation. Let's go back to Martha Raddatz. Martha, you've been talking to sources, also military sources, and you have some new information, what you're learning about the weapon.
Well, we know from our own reporting from Aaron Katersky and others here at ABC that they believe it was an AR-15 and that the shooter got off 8 rounds. Talking to a military source who said it is the same thing as an M4, which they use in the military. We train to shoot at our ranges out to 300 meters without optics or a scope. A good shooter can easily shoot further with an optic. That's about 330 yards. And it's believed the shooter was 200 to 300 yards out. This military officer said the 300 yards is definitely in range, not an easy shot, but 100% in range. And this is very sobering wit. He said, I am surprised he didn't hit him. We do know that his ear was grazed and not certain exactly how that happened at this point, although Donald Trump said he believed it was a bullet going by him. But I am surprised he didn't hit him. This military officer also says that it was likely, given the sounds he has been listening to all day on that tape that we have been playing and that Donald Trump himself heard and everybody there who was there, that it was far away, but that perhaps the shooter tried one shot, missed, and then got off several very rapidly just into the crowd.
Yeah, 200 to 300 yards away, and that shooter on top of a roof. And Martha, to your point, it is worth emphasizing that. I mean, former President Trump says that he heard the bullet whizzing by and that it pierced the top of his ear, literally inches away from taking his life.
It certainly would have been if it, in fact, is proven to be a bullet that went right by his ear. millimeters. And, you know, the way you turn your head or you don't turn your head. And again, that we have to emphasize this was clearly in range for a weapon like that, whether the shooter had a scope, whether the shooter did not have a scope. Even without a scope, this military officer says you can take someone out at that range. Again, the dangers of these kinds of events with people way outside of the event itself, way outside security, and that is something the Secret Service is going to have to look at, local law enforcement as well, how this person got on that roof undetected by police or anyone else carrying a rifle up there, carrying an AR-15.
And again, we still don't have information about the threat itself, the motive, who the shooter was. We haven't even been told by law enforcement, you know, whether they think the threat is over. So still a lot more information to come. Martha, thank you so much. We appreciate it as always. And throughout the evening here, we've been speaking with many other eyewitnesses. You heard from Rachel earlier. We spoke to some live on the air who were at the rally describing how the former president had just started to speak and then the shots rang out.
What you saw and what you heard. You said that you heard the popping sounds and you got down?
Sounds. At first you think like maybe firecrackers, but it continued, and then somebody yelled, "Get down." We got down, and we huddled and we started praying. And we just started praying, and thank God, a little while later, we got up. When we saw other people get up, we saw Trump get up, raise his fist like I'm okay, and we kept praying.
I felt really bad. I'm worried about our grandchildren. What kind of life are they going to have if this goes on, if people don't have the right to say what they want?
You told me that you were near the very front. You weren't very far.
No, we were like from here to where that thing is.
And you got down, you said you got down immediately?
Yeah. Everybody yelled, "Get down." My daughter-in-law, Lisa, she said for us to hurry up and get down.
Well, I mean, I saw all the Secret Service kind of cover Trump. They did a really good job about that, making sure he was protected, telling everyone to get down. So I think they did take a good care of making sure everyone was understanding what was going on and being serious but not freaking everybody out.
What was your initial reaction when you heard those popping noises?
To get down, yeah. So I actually my boyfriend pushed me on the ground and went on top of me, which was really nice. But I think a lot of people were a little too shocked to understand what was going on originally, for sure. But I think everyone listened pretty well and it was handled pretty well.
Did you see some of that commotion that was playing out on the other side of the bleacher, where we saw law enforcement agents sort of swarm around another individual, or did you ultimately just rush out?
No, we were there for a minute because they did tell us to go back down again just in case. I think that was good because it helped calm people down. But I think one of the stands that I was next to, they did carry out a man, and there was another one that might have been injured. I'm not 100% sure, but definitely one at least. And on the other stand on the other side, because I was on the right, on the left, there were a bunch of men in uniform surrounding someone. So that was interesting to see.
You said that you were very impressed by the speed in which Secret Service was able to get on that stage within seconds of all of us hearing those popping sounds.
Yeah, absolutely. They did a great job. I definitely felt protected in the situation. The sniper was on it, watching on guard. Everyone on the scene did a great job. I mean, of course it was nerve-wracking in the moment, but I never felt like I was in danger, which was cool. They were on the president, which I'm very thankful of, and they did a great job protecting him and getting him out as quick as possible. He is doing good, which is good. Yeah.
I'm the Republican nominee for the Senate in Pennsylvania. I was in the front row, and President Trump had just announced me and said he was going to have me come up on the stage, and said, well, wait a minute. And then there were a number of shots, I think probably 7 or 8 shots. It wasn't clear whether they would come from one place or 2 places, at least I couldn't tell. And immediately there was a swarm of Secret Service officers that, got on top of, knocked down President Trump and got on top of him. And then he stood back up, and you sort of saw this fist come out, sort of defiant that it looked like he was okay, but you couldn't tell for sure. It looked like there was some blood, but it wasn't obvious. And then the entire crowd went to the ground. because we weren't sure whether the shots were done. And then unfortunately, over my shoulder, someone had clearly been hit. I was on the ground, and up in the bleachers, probably 3 or 4 bleachers behind me, it looked like there was a man who was severely injured. There was a lot of blood, and his people around him were trying to administer first aid. And then the police, some police officers came in and carried him out, and presumably took him to get first aid. That's really all I could see. I don't know if there were other people injured, and I don't know if there was anybody apprehended, because as you might imagine, once that happened, the crowd was very chaotic, and it was very hard to know what was going on. And we're still there at the rally, just sitting trying to get out because the traffic is so backed up.
And Dave, your account seems to confirm some of this reporting that we're getting about a shooter and potential bystanders who were hurt. Just talk more about your initial reaction. I mean, seeing this, you're running for Senate in the state of Pennsylvania. You're about to walk up on the stage. You're getting introduced by the former president, and then you hear these shots ring out and the chaos in the crowd. What was going through your mind in that moment?
Well, it takes a minute to process. People started to panic all around. You could feel, people were very scared, and so, everybody just dropped to the ground. And it felt very obvious that the president was under assault, and very much at risk. And it wasn't clear that he was okay to begin with. And then, once it started to sink in, you're thinking, are there still shooters out there? Are they going to target other people? And it's just like these, situations. I was in the military previously. You realize over time that the facts start to come together. So you got to be careful not to draw too many conclusions early on. But I think what we all felt was a sense of, oh my Lord, everybody's in danger, because there's clearly a shooter, at least one shooter in the crowd, and maybe more. And really, I think scary for everybody who was there. And shocking, even more than scary, just shocking, because you were in the middle of this rally, and it was kind of fun, and people were enthusiastic, and all of a sudden it was turned upside down.
What does this say to you about our state of division and the politics in this country right now?
Well, I don't want to draw any conclusions before I know more about it, but obviously it's if you're a public official, if you're a presidential candidate, and your safety's at risk, that's scary for all of us, no matter what party you're in. And so I think it's a moment to take stock. And you had 15,000. It seemed it was a huge crowd. I was told by the law enforcement people there are 15,000 people who were enthusiastically supporting their candidate, and all of a sudden, the former president, his life is at risk, and what were peaceful people in the audience are wounded, potentially, fatally. I mean, that's unacceptable, and it's not a matter of party. That's just unacceptable in our great country.
I do want to go to Leonard Verdetto, who is an eyewitness who was there at the rally today. He's joining us now on the phone. Leonard, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you, sir. How you doing? Thanks for having me on.
Absolutely, Leonard. We're so grateful that you are okay. Can you just walk us through what happened and what you saw?
Sure, absolutely. So everybody was excited to see the former president coming out. We were all, excited, and we were all happy. We were all joyful. We were all there for each other. And then the former president was giving his speech. Then moments later, there was some, popping sounds that were going off. So about maybe 6 or 7 to 8 shots that were happening. None of us really registered at the time, but then all people were saying, "Get down, get down." Even I was saying, "Get down." Other people were saying, "Get down" as well. And, we were all praying. We were praying to Yeshua, the Lord Jesus, and we were praying to him to keep us safe, keep us protected. But unfortunately, what happened was, someone did get shot. What I do hear is that I think 2 people did get shot, that to the best of my knowledge. And I believe that, the former president, which I'm glad he is safe. So.
Now, Leonard, and again, we don't have all these things confirmed yet, so this is your perspective here. But when you say that you believe that 2 people were shot, could you actually see people, potential victims?
What I seen, and to the best of my knowledge, sir, is that, you know, and again, I was hearing it from other news sources as well, but what I personally seen, there was blood on a couple of people. You know, someone was shot just like about 5 feet right behind us, to be honest with you. So we were that close, and thank God we weren't shot either.
And where were you located? We're looking at the video right now. This is the former president being brought back to his feet after those shots were fired. Were you on the stands behind Donald Trump, or were you in front of him?
If you're looking exactly at him, we'd be on the left side, actually. We were the left side of the other stands where you've seen those big TVs.
So the left side of the stands facing the president or behind the former president?
Facing the president. We were more on the sides, looking on the side of the president, so facing him.
And Leonard, let me just ask you too. Obviously, you go to we've been talking about this, the division in this country, the polarization. But here you are. Obviously, you're exercising your right to, you know, support whichever politician you believe in. And you go to an event like this, you don't expect there to be violence. What's in your heart right now?
Well, what's in the heart right now is I'm encouraging the American people to pray to Lord Jesus, because right now our country's divided.
Again, those words from some of the witnesses that we heard from throughout the hours this evening who were there inside this venue in Butler, Pennsylvania. The event was supposed to be sort of a precursor for the big week at the Republican National Convention. Former President Donald Trump had been hinting that he was going to announce his running mate in the coming days. So all eyes were on this event when the gunfire rang out. And then those terrifying moments and these images you continue to see here with the former president being escorted off the stage with the blood trickling down the right side of his face. The former president in a statement once again saying that he was shot with a bullet that pierced the upper part of his right ear, and he immediately knew that something was wrong when he heard the whizzing sounds and the shots. Some of our other reporters getting information from law enforcement that they now confirm that the shooter fired as many as 8 rounds from an AR-style rifle while perched on a rooftop adjacent to the venue. The shooter was 200 to 300 yards away at the time of the gunfire, and that shooter was shot and killed by the U.S. Secret Service. We know at least 1 spectator, possibly 2, were shot and killed. One of them we know was confirmed dead. Another one sustained serious injuries. We're still waiting to get more information on that. Law enforcement also unable to tell us at this time what the motivation was, who the shooter was, whether it was a man or a woman, and whether the threat fully has been neutralized, or whether it was a lone actor. So still so much information that we need to learn throughout the course of the evening and in the coming days. Well, let's go back to our entire team who've been with us on the air for several hours now. John Carl is in Milwaukee because that was supposed to be the location for all the news this week at the Republican National Convention. John, you've been talking to Republican sources there. In fact, you were in an interview when reports of these shots first came out.
I wasn't in a formal interview, but I was standing on the floor of the convention with the person who was running this convention, Michael Whatley, the chairman of the Republican National Committee. We were just, talking about the big week's plans ahead, speculating on when Trump will actually make the announcement of his running mate when this news broke. And as you can imagine, shockwaves throughout the hall. Nobody really had any idea yet what had happened other than those initial reports and that shocking live video. He took a call from one of his aides and was whisked off the floor to try to figure out what was going on. This has effectively put a freeze on the campaign, at least for the moment. And it's not just here in Milwaukee, where although the convention is starting on Monday, you are already seeing Republicans from across the country gather here. In fact, there was supposed to be a big welcome reception tonight. As you can imagine, that has been canceled. All events, the pre-convention events, have been canceled. Over on the Democratic side, we've heard from the Biden campaign that they have stopped outgoing communications. They say that they are working to pull down all of the political television advertising, all the political advertising that is up as this campaign is effectively put in a state of deep freeze. And then we're hearing statements across the political spectrum, I think most prominently from former presidents. We heard from President George W. Bush, who said that Laura and I are grateful that President Trump is safe following the cowardly attack on his life. He commends the Secret Service, obviously, as somebody who was also protected by the Secret Service. We heard a similar statement from Barack and Michelle Obama, a similar statement from Bill and Hillary Clinton. We've heard statements from the president's allies and from his political opponents, all saying that violence has absolutely no place in American politics, uniformly condemning this. But I have to also say we are starting to hear some very unfortunate signs of efforts to politicize this horrific event.
That's right. And we noted before, this will be a big test to see how the country responds, politically, yes, and in living rooms and workplaces across this country. John, thank you so much. I do want to hear from another person who was there at the event, witnessed the gunfire. Rico Elmore is joining us now. Rico, if you can hear me, just tell us where you were when you first heard the shots.
Whit, thank you so much. And also, with all due respect, my prayers go out to the family when this all occurred. I know it's very rough. So I was positioned probably about maybe 20 feet away from the president at the point in time when he was making his address. I was to the right of the stage due to me being I was a speaker at the event. So I did my speech earlier today. Doing the pre-program, and I was a few feet from where this all occurred. We heard the shots, and I thought it was, first thought it was fireworks because, people are on edge, and any kind of loud boom you hear, you're going to think gunshots immediately, especially because of the environment of what was going on. And I turned around, and someone yelled medic. And I looked, and there was no way a medic could have got to that person in time. So I left my seat, took my tie off, I jumped over the barrier, and I ran to the individual. But when I got there, it was too late. The person was bleeding out through their head. And like I said, once again, respects to the family because this is a very tough time. But they were shot, and I tried to, block the wound. I held a towel against it, and until a medical team arrived and got him out. And, from there I helped the police and crowd control with getting people out of there because people were very nervous. People were very hesitant, and we had to move people fast and get them into a safe location opposite of where the shooter was at or said to be at. So I assisted with getting people down and getting people out. And I try to keep kids calm and just get people clear.
Wow, Rico. Obviously, we want to be sensitive to the victim's family.
Yes.
But can you tell us more about this person, where they were? Was it a man? Was it a woman?
Well, it was a male. It was a male victim. He was literally just sitting there in the stands. He had to be maybe 3 or 4 rows up from the bottom of the bleachers where everybody was sitting. And 1 second, where everyone's cheering and happy and listening to what Trump's saying, and the next minute, he's gone.
Rico, did you have any training in this sort of like first aid? I mean, this is life-saving aid that you're describing here.
I mean, I'm in the military. I'm in the 171st Air Refueling Wing, and we learn first aid and self-aid buddy care and basic training. And at the point, as soon as I heard the shots and I seen and heard someone yell medic, my first instinct was, I'm trained in self-aid. I'm trained in applying a tourniquet, but I'm not trained to see someone's, what I witnessed.
I mean, nobody can be trained for that. And we're getting the sense, Rico, not just from you, but from others, I think there's going to be some serious time, some healing that's going to need to take place for the people who were there and saw all of this, and especially for you to see everything up close, and you got the sense early on that that this person was lost?
From understanding head wounds and how they operate, when I seen what I seen, I was afraid that that person was lost. And reading what has been done, said, and stated in the news so far, those are now facts, which is a shame.
Rico, I don't even know if these are the right words to ask this question because most people have never been in this situation, but how are you processing what you saw and what you witnessed?
I mean, one can only process what happened, hopefully as slow as possible. But my worry, my heart at this point in time is not for myself, but it's for the families of the loved one.
Rico Elmore.
That's important.
Thank you again for your time, and I'm sure the family is grateful, at least at your efforts. That you jumped in and you did everything you could to help out, and of course our hearts go out to all the victims and you as well. And we're thankful that you're okay and able to share your story. Thank you very much tonight.
Thank you.
Again, that's one of the many witness accounts that we've received from Rico Elmore there. Really horrific in how this played out. These terrifying and chaotic moments that people described for us, and it went from jubilant people in the crowd, eager to hear from the former president, to within a matter of seconds, the pop, pop, pop that people thought at first maybe sounded like fireworks before the horror of what actually happened came into focus. Let's go back to Martha Raddatz. Martha, I know you've been talking to sources here, and I gotta say, just it's one thing when we get the reports from law enforcement. But when you hear from a witness who, witnessed someone die before their very eyes, it's a reminder of just how horrific and historic this event was today.
And how tragic. Yeah. And I think most of us just saw what happened to former President Trump, and we're all thankful he is okay. But what happened in that venue, and hearing the story of that young soldier or military person leaping into action, which is not a surprise, going there for a jubilant celebration and having to deal with that kind of tragedy is sobering to us all. I do know that the weapon that the shooter apparently used was something that could be fired from 200, 300 yards away or even more, and could have been accurate. He very well could have shot more people. He very well could have killed former President Trump, even though he was 200 or 300 yards away, because that kind of weapon has that kind of range. We don't know yet whether he had a scope on that weapon or any sort of scope whatsoever. But even so, even just with the naked eye, he was clearly shooting within range of President Trump.
Yeah, still so many questions about how this played out, who this shooter was, the motivation there, and where the investigation goes from here. Martha Raddatz, as always, thank you. Let's go to Josh Margolin, one of our senior investigative producers, who's been getting new details from law enforcement. Josh, what are you learning?
With the key part of the investigation, a key part of the investigation will be on looking at where the shooter was, this elevated position, as the Secret Service now confirms. Elevated positions have long been perceived by law enforcement as a real risk to events, to people that gather. Look, just in recent years, we saw the Highland Park, Illinois mass shooting on July 4th, 2022. That was a shooter who was at an elevated position. Of course, the Las Vegas massacre, the worst mass shooting in American history, that was with a shooter who fired down from an elevated position on the Las Vegas Strip. And obviously, we can't forget President Kennedy was killed by a gunman who was located floors above the motorcade that Kennedy was in when he was assassinated. Elevated positions are they The Secret Service prepares for this. So a key thing is going to be, how did this gunman get to the location? Why was that location available to that person?
Exactly. And I think obviously this is early on, and it's hard to ask some of these hypothetical questions now. But Josh, you know, like all the surveillance and the scanning of these areas that go into place before the event even occurs, and the drones and the helicopters and devices up above, it's hard to imagine how something like this could have been missed from 200, 300 yards away, a rooftop elevated position. That will definitely be part of the investigation going forward.
Absolutely. And in fact, the Secret Service has already gone public during the January 6th committee hearings. There was testimony about the Secret Service. They know that people that come to Trump rallies sometimes come carrying weapons, not necessarily because they want to hurt anybody. People carry weapons, but you're not allowed to bring those weapons into proximity of the president, of the former president, of the candidate.
Josh Margolin, thank you so much. We appreciate it. Let's go back to Rick Klein, our political director at Washington bureau chief, who's there in Milwaukee. I just want to get more on your response, because it is hard to imagine how this week of the Republican National Convention is going to play out, business as usual or as planned. What are you learning about some of the adjustments or changes that could be made in the coming hours?
Whit, I was told just moments ago that there were no changes to the convention itself, but I would note that there is precedent for condensing a convention in the event that you need to. There have been times where major storms, either in a convention city or elsewhere in the country, have forced the cancellation of one night. There is plenty of wiggle room in a schedule like this to be able to do the convention business in fewer than the 4 nights that are now scheduled. But I am told that things are still on track as of this hour, although things are changing fast. But Whit, I would mention, just to understand what a convention is like, it's not just what goes on inside the arena itself. That's the main convention business. We're talking about dozens, maybe hundreds of other events throughout the weekend. John Carl's been reporting about things that are canceled tonight. Well, tomorrow night, there's a 15,000 person open air welcoming party for all delegates and invited guests. That is an enormous event, and it's an enormously hard event to secure. Similarly, you've got talking about breakfasts that happen around the city in hotel ballrooms and private residences. So many opportunities to worry about the security footprint that involve elected officials, maybe even the president himself, or the former president, or his vice presidential running mate might be slated to attend things like this. So you have to think about not just the event itself, which is still on, but everything surrounding it. This was a city that was ready to celebrate this moment. It is now a city that is worried, concerned about this increased threat environment.
Rick Klein, thank you. Let's go back to John Carl, also there in Milwaukee. And John, picking up on that point, because this is not just known threats with security, right? It's anybody who could be motivated. We've talked about lone wolves and that threat in the past. It's somebody who may see an event that they saw and then be inspired to do something. That can be almost impossible to plan for, especially when you have large gatherings of lots of people.
Yeah, and look, this was already a place that was going to be in lockdown for the next week. I mean, I am here just outside the Convention Center Hall, and you can see, I mean, you can't see, but I can see right over here the fencing that has been put up to basically secure this place, several block radius, basically already on lockdown, even though the convention itself doesn't start until Monday at 2 o'clock Eastern time. But they were preparing to keep this, and I've been covering political conventions for a long time. Heightened security is not new, but there does feel to be something different already before this terrible event in Pennsylvania. A heightened sense of concern, again, given the threat environment, given the fact that death threats have become just a matter of course across in our politics. Political figures, public servants, journalists facing this kind of stuff. So there's, I can only imagine what the next few days are going to look like here.
Yeah, the next 24 to 48 hours, there could be some big changes, even though for now they appear to be staying the course with the plans. John Carl, yes. Thank you. Let's go to our Chief Justice correspondent, Pierre Thomas. Pierre, you've been reporting on these threats for months now. Law enforcement, they've been aware, they've been worried about it. This obviously a worst case scenario as they are now investigating what appears to be a possible assassination attempt of a former president.
Indeed, we have a new statement from the Attorney General. He expresses his concern for former President Trump. He says his heart goes out to the victim, the spectator who died. He also issues a statement saying, quote, "We will not tolerate violence of any kind. Violence like this is an attack on our democracy. The Justice Department will bring every available resource to this investigation." And we have some more clarity now about exactly how this is going to unfold. The Justice Department's National Security Division, along with the FBI, will oversee this investigation with support from the U.S. Attorney's Office in Pittsburgh. So what that means is that this is officially being looked at as an assassination plot. Potentially that is going to be investigated until they can, as another source said, determine otherwise. That tells you the level of concern. Also, I'm being told by sources that law enforcement will be looking at security for all major public events, particularly those involving politicians, in the coming days. As you said, Whit, the elevated threat environment has been of great concern by the FBI director, and sources within the Attorney General's office have been telling me repeatedly in recent weeks that the biggest concern he had going forward toward the fall was this spike in threats of political violence. And the fact that also terrorism, ISIS, all these different things were surging at precisely the same time. That is the environment that we face ourselves with. And the other thing that's very important, too, from a source I just spoke with, is that until they can get a definitive blueprint, understanding of who this suspect is, they are not releasing very much information because they cannot yet say that this is contained to only this event. They cannot yet say that.
Pierre Thomas, thank you. Let's go back to John Karl. I understand you have a new statement from the RNC.
Yeah, this is a joint statement from the Trump campaign and from the Republican National Committee, and we just got this in, so I'm going to be reading this to you for the first time here on the air. Statement from the Trump campaign and the RNC. As was communicated earlier this evening, President Trump is doing well and grateful to law enforcement and to first responders for their fast action. President Trump looks forward to joining you all in Milwaukee as we proceed with our convention to nominate him to serve as the 47th President of the United States. As our party's nominee, President Trump will continue to share his vision to make America great again. So the key line there is that President Trump looks forward to joining you here in Milwaukee to continue the plans for our convention. Nothing is changing here in terms of the convention going forward. In fact, an individual I spoke to who has been involved in the planning here said they were still working things out, but predicted that the convention wouldn't just continue, but it will continue with a vengeance. I expect not just all 4 days of this convention to take place, but it to be a very energized convention and very much focused on portraying Donald Trump as somebody who couldn't even be stopped by an attempted assassin.
All right, John Karl, let's go to someone who knows a lot about Republican conventions, and Reince Priebus, our political contributor, who's also a former head of the RNC and former chief of staff at one time under Trump. Reince is joining us on the phone right now. First, Reince, can you just give me your reaction? What are you hearing from Republicans across the board?
Well, obviously, like everybody, it's just horrific and dreadful, and it's a sad day. It's, innocent person was killed, and maybe others. We just don't know the extent of this stuff, but it's just a sad reminder of how violent some people can be and seemingly our inability to stop it. So it's all of those emotions all at the same time. So, and we're also gathered right now with, what soon will be about 50,000 people in Milwaukee to celebrate our nominee and also celebrate our community in Milwaukee and in Wisconsin. And obviously it's tragic in a lot of ways. So I'm obviously grateful and I'm grateful that the guy was killed, but the whole thing's tragic. Lots of lost life and obviously just a lot of mixed emotions. Let me just put it that way.
Ryan, speaking of those mixed emotions, and we've heard a number of statements from politicians on all sides of the aisle, most condemning the violence and saying that, you know, this can never stand. It should not happen. But we are also hearing some who are pointing the finger and placing blame. What's your reaction to that? Is there a place for that kind of conversation right now in this moment?
I don't think so. I mean, I think you have to think and you have to contemplate. And in the case of blame, I guess you can investigate what happened and why it happened. And, you know, I'm sure there's going to be a time for that. But I just don't feel comfortable getting into that right now. You know, there's obviously sick people out there, and they don't care about life. They don't care about their own life. So you don't care about your own life. You don't care about other people's lives. You get tragic results, and it's more sad, I think, than anything. I think that's probably the overwhelming feeling of most people.
Ryan Priebus, thank you for your time tonight. We do appreciate it. I want to go back to John Santucci, our executive editor on investigations. And John, you've been in close contact with the Trump family tonight. They gave you some of the first statements directly about Trump's condition, that he was receiving medical treatment, that he's doing okay, he's doing fine. And also he claims that he was shot, that it was a bullet that grazed the top of his ear. What more are they telling you tonight?
Yeah, well, Whit, first, a very rare public statement from Ivanka Trump. Of course, this was the only member of the Trump family that went to the White House with Donald Trump when he, of course, won and ascended to the presidency in 2017. Ivanka writing on Twitter with tonight, well, thank you for your love and prayers for my father and for the other victims of today's senseless violence in Butler, Pennsylvania. I'm grateful to the Secret Service and all the other law enforcement officers for their quick and decisive action today. I continue to pray for our country. I love you, Dad, today and always. That statement from Ivanka Trump posted to her Twitter account. And again, a very rare public statement from the former first daughter because, you know, as we know, unlike her two brothers, being the three eldest children of the former president, they had still stayed very actively involved in Donald Trump's political life. Ivanka has really gone off into a private life with her husband, Jared Kushner. You mentioned with other members of the family I've spoken to, I did have a very brief exchange with Eric Trump. Of course, you'll recall from all of the trials that his father faced earlier this year, Eric Trump, a fixture by his father's side in that Manhattan courtroom. We were, of course, at the Manhattan DA's case earlier this year. Eric Trump telling me that his father is the toughest man I have ever met. Not elaborating on his father's condition, but, you know, nevertheless, right there in his father's corner, as he has been, of course, let's not forget also his wife, Lara Trump, Whit, as you well know, is now the second in command of the Republican National Committee. It'll be her first convention as number 2 for the RNC when that gets kicked off in Milwaukee on Monday. And finally, Whit, as ABC News first reported and I first spoke to right at the moment after this happened, Donald Trump Jr. Had told me via phone that his father has been in good spirits, that nothing is going to stop him. And, of course, again, Donald Trump Jr., you know, his brother's active by his father's side, but you have to recognize that Donald Trump Jr., of course, has really been the one to continue the political mantle of his father. And it's actually a rare occurrence that the two sons, one or the other, was not with the president tonight in Butler, Pennsylvania. We know they have been very active present, whether it be in the courtroom or on the campaign trail with.
John Santucci, thank you. Let's go back to our chief White House correspondent, Mary Bruce. Mary, we know that President Biden is in Rehoboth, Delaware for the weekend, but he has been following developments, briefed by his staff and the Secret Service. And then he came out before the cameras earlier today condemning the violence, saying that there's no place in America for this kind of violence. What more do we know about his activities tonight? We know that he did reach out to former President Trump directly.
Yeah, he did. He is still trying to get in touch with the former president. We know that he reached out to him in a rare move, President Biden actually referring to his rival by his first name, saying he was trying to get a hold of Donald. The president coming out and forcefully condemning this kind of violence, saying it is sick, saying there's no place in America for this kind of violence, saying it's one of the reasons that this country has to come together, one of the reasons why we have to unite the country, saying we cannot be like this. He said, a Trump rally should be something that is allowed to be conducted peacefully without any kind of problems like this. And while the president did refer to this as political violence, he did not go so far to call it an assassination attempt. He was asked that directly. The president instead saying that he had an opinion, but that he didn't have any facts. We know he continues to be briefed and updated by this. He has been briefed by the Director of Homeland Security, the Secretary of Homeland Security, the Director of the Secret Service, his Homeland Security advisor. He remains for now at Rehoboth, Delaware. He was there at the beach house, at his beach house for the weekend. He actually was leaving Mass when he learned of this incident. He was fully briefed and then I'm told wanted to come out and speak to Americans as soon as he could. This, there is no question, completely upends and changes this race. The president is now and his campaign are trying to turn down the temperature. They're pulling down their political communications, pulling down their ads. It's not just, we've been talking about how this will or will not impact the Republican National Convention. This will also have a huge impact on the president's campaign as well. We'll be looking closely to see how he may be changing any of his upcoming events as well. He's supposed to be out on the road in Texas and in Nevada early on next week. Will any of that change? One of many remaining questions. But the president and many of those close to him, we have seen a slew of his cabinet officials and advisors coming out and calling to sort of dial down rhetoric in this country. One of the big remaining questions is whether that will happen or whether this incident will further divide this country.
And that will be a big test, Mary, we've been talking about. I want to follow up on that because while the president and his campaign, at least publicly, are talking about dialing down the rhetoric, we have seen some politicians out there already placing blame that would appear to only turn up the heat across the country. How is the Biden campaign, how are others who you're talking to responding to that sort of rhetoric?
Yeah, look, you are already seeing those who are trying to politicize this. We have seen from some Republicans, including from J.D. Vance, who, of course, has been on the very short list as a possible VP pick for Donald Trump, coming out and suggesting that Joe Biden's rhetoric is partly to blame for this, noting that the president has been running a campaign very much centered on Biden's argument that Donald Trump is a danger to democracy. The president is trying, to use this as a moment to bring the country together. Of course, that sentiment is something that his campaign strongly disagrees with. But I think it is no surprise, given how divisive the rhetoric in this country is now, given how divided our nation is, that we are unfortunately seeing, just shortly after a horrific incident like this, that there are, efforts to politicize some of this. How this plays out, of course, remains to be seen.
This is such a pivotal moment in the campaign as we move towards the conventions and then the elections. It remains to be seen how the country will respond. Mary Bruce, thank you. I do want to bring in, we have some more eyewitnesses who were there at that event in Pennsylvania today. John Dohanish was there and he is joining us now on the phone. John, if you can hear me, just walk us through what you saw and heard.
Hey, yeah. So, well, first, I just wanted to send out my condolences and prayers to the families of the victims. It was just crazy to just watch that so fast. But I'm just going to jump right into it, right to when the shots happened. Trump started his speech, and immediately it sounded like what everyone's saying, like fireworks or firecrackers. And as soon as I heard the first one, I looked over. We were probably right in the middle of the stands. If you're facing Trump, we were in the left section underneath the screen, right in the front row. I just saw the bullets hitting the stands, bouncing up, and I thought they were like the shells at first. Like I thought someone was right beside us. And then I heard the pause. There was the 4 shots, maybe a 5-second pause, and then the rest of the 4 shots that I then heard. And then all of a sudden I'm hearing everyone just screaming, get down, get down. I'm hearing get a medic. I'm seeing people with blood on them. I'm trying to help people get down. And I look up, I see the Secret Service gathering Trump immediately. Like I heard everyone saying, that was just highly impressive. But yeah, that was basically it from from that. It just happened all so fast.
I'm sure, and John, again, as we've seen the video, it was really just a matter of seconds that all this was happening as the shots were fired, and you're there witnessing all of this in real time. Was there a moment when fear started to settle in, when you realized, oh, this is real, this is really happening, these are gunshots, and now I'm worried about my own safety and the safety of others?
So I wouldn't say fear, but definitely more concern for others, that because I was around a lot of more older people, so I was more worried about trying to get them down before I can get myself, because I knew I was going to. I have my faith in God, so I knew I was going to be okay, but I just wanted to help other people get down, and I had someone's, I don't know, person with me. I was covering them. They were crying. I was trying to calm them down, help them keep calm. I told them just to keep praying, keep calm. I just kept telling them everything was going to be okay, but unfortunately for those 2 victims, or if there was more, I'm not sure, but yeah, tried my best.
Were you close to some of the victims?
Probably about 5 to 7 feet away from the one gentleman in the stands there, who I guess it was someone's father there.
And how quickly after seeing that victim did you realize that person was in grave danger? Was it immediate?
It was immediate. Like I seen, whenever I heard he got hit in the head, from what I heard, I seen someone else give the signal that he didn't make it, and that just infuriated me. That just enraged me, and I just have a feeling that we're gonna come back and come out stronger than ever, I feel now.
And when you say that, and of course, there's such a mix of emotions, right? And you were there, and you're still processing everything. But when you say we're going to come out of this stronger, what do you mean by that? You mean the country? You mean uniting?
Country, yep.
Yeah.
As one, I feel like people are going to hopefully eventually start joining together and come out as one against the evil coming into the world or into our country, however you want to look at it like that. Stand up, I guess we could say.
John Dohanish, we appreciate your time tonight, and we're thankful that you are okay and the people around you, and we're just so sorry, and our hearts ache for you and others who had to witness this horror, and of course the families of those who were killed and injured. John, thank you for your time.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Once again, for those of you who are just tuning in, we're coming to 10 p.m. Eastern Time here, the top of the hour. We've been on this story for hours. I'm Whit Johnson in New York. We are following the major developments tonight after the shooting at a campaign rally for former President Donald Trump. This happened in Butler, Pennsylvania. On the right side of your screen right there, you're seeing the events play out in real time. It was a matter of seconds. The president described the incident on Truth Social a short time ago, saying that he was shot with a bullet that pierced the upper part of his right ear. And you can actually see in the video moments before he reached for his ear before he went down to the ground. He was then taken to a nearby hospital and is reported to be fine. The incident is being investigated now as a possible assassination attempt. Authorities say the shots were fired from a rooftop outside the venue from some 200 to 300 yards away. 8 rounds were fired from an AR-style rifle. The shooter was then neutralized, killed by the Secret Service. A second person, a bystander, is also dead, and we're told that 2 others were injured, and we're still awaiting more details on their conditions. Earlier this evening, President Biden came before the cameras condemning the violence, saying all federal agencies are engaged in this investigation. The FBI is taking the lead. They will, of course, focus on the shooter and the motivation, but also on the security measures surrounding the event. This horrific moment, loud popping noises, that's what we could hear in the video. That's what we've been hearing from witnesses. The former president, in the photographs you will see, appeared to grab his right ear. Secret Service agents then rushing the stage, protecting him with their bodies, crowding around the former president. Those anxious moments waiting to see if Trump was okay. And you can see that trickle of blood coming down in some of the images. Secret Service then helping Trump up with what appeared to be that blood around his ear, Trump pumping his fists, signaling to the crowd that he was okay. And we did hear some roars and cheers from the crowd when they saw that. Agents helping Trump to a vehicle. And once again, as he gets in there, acknowledging the crowd that was cheering him as he left, and then they take him off to the hospital. Of course, hundreds of supporters were there witnessing all of this, left shaken and in shock. The incident comes just 2 days before the Republican National Convention is set to start. Late this evening, the campaign and the RNC issuing a joint statement saying former President Trump looks forward to joining the convention. Apparently, it will go on as scheduled. And right now, here's ABC's Rachel Scott, who was at the rally in Butler when the incident occurred.
This is the shocking moment. Chaos erupted at Donald Trump's rally in Butler, Pennsylvania.
If you want to really see something that's said, take a look at what happened.
You can hear several pops and see the former president grabbing his ear, ducking for cover behind the podium. Secret Service agents rushing the stage, surrounding Trump, shielding him, taking him down to the ground. The screaming crowd looking on in horror. A short time later, agents carefully lifting the former president up.
I got you, sir. I got you, sir. Let me get my shoes, sir. Hold on, your head is bloody.
Blood clearly seen on his face, Trump pumping his fist. Agents whisking the former president off the stage, down the stairs to a waiting armored SUV, rushing him to a local medical center.
We heard what we appeared to be gunfire coming. The former president was rushed off the stage. Right now, with Secret Service, he's being escorted into his vehicle. This was a chaotic moment that just played out right here in Pennsylvania. People running and rushing to the ground as they heard those apparent shots fired.
Then pandemonium, thousands of people running for cover.
Unbelievable.
Tonight, the Trump campaign releasing a statement saying the former president is fine and being checked out at a local medical facility. Donald Trump Jr. telling ABC News he spoke to his father, who remains in the hospital, and described Trump as in good spirits, saying he remains under observations.
Just hours ago, this area was lined with Trump supporters. They entered that tent right there to be screened by Secret Service, going through metal detectors, their belongings tested. Now, this is the space where you have Trump supporters that are leaving, panicked and confused, as Secret Service agents rush us out of this area and back to our cars.
Tonight, the crowd still in disbelief.
Tell me what you saw and what you heard. You said that you heard the popping sounds and you got down?
Sounds. At first you think like maybe firecrackers, but it continued, and then somebody yelled, "Get down." We got down, and we huddled, and we started praying.
Tonight, local officials telling ABC News those sounds were in fact gunshots. Live rounds fired from a rooftop adjacent to the venue outside the security perimeter. This is being investigated as an attempted assassination. And tonight, the local district attorney telling ABC News at least one person is dead and the shooter is dead as well. Tonight, President Biden addressing the nation.
I have tried to get a hold of Donald. He's with his doctors. Apparently he's doing well. I plan on talking to him shortly, I hope, when I get back to the telephone. Look, there's no place in America for this kind of violence. It's sick. It's sick. It's one of the reasons why we have to unite this country. We cannot allow for this to be happening. We cannot be like this. We cannot condone this. But the idea that there's political violence or violence in America like this is just unheard of. It's just not appropriate. And everybody must condemn it.
And moments ago, former President Donald Trump posting on Truth Social, thanking the Secret Service, saying, "I want to extend my condolences to the family of the person at the rally who was killed, and also to the family of another person who was badly injured. It is incredible that such an act could take place in our country. I was shot with a bullet that pierced the upper part of my right ear. I knew immediately that something was wrong and that I heard a whizzing sound, shots, and immediately felt the bullet ripping through the skin. Much bleeding took place, so I realized then what was happening. God bless America."
And back out here outside of where this rally took place just hours ago, we are just the last remaining network crew, and no one else is allowed in at this time. We know that behind me, where this rally took place, it's now an active crime scene. We have seen an increase in the amount of officials that have gone in. We've also seen people leave. We actually just spoke to one man who was a physician. He said that this was his very first Trump rally. He just spoke to the FBI about what he witnessed. He said he rushed to the aid of that bystander, of that attendee that ultimately was shot and later passed away due to his injuries. He said he was trying to do everything that he could to help. And I just want to move aside here to give you a sense of how this looks right now. behind me where the lights are, that is where this Trump rally took place. And within minutes of the former president taking the stage, that's when we heard the gunshots erupt. And something that's very striking, I will tell you, being here tonight after witnessing the chaos and the panic that unfolded in those minutes, the terrifying moments for everyone that gathered here today, there is that image of the American flag, a strong reminder that even in these divided times, there is something that still unites us. Whit?
Absolutely. That's a great point. And Rachel, you've been there for hours in the stifling heat and witnessing all of this. You were inside when it happened. You were rushed out by law enforcement, and here you are once again. I do have a follow-up question for you, though. I know as you're sort of giving us the lay of the land here, we've been hearing from not only law enforcement about this other building that the shooter was apparently perched on top of, and we also heard from witnesses who said that they described seeing that location with canines and law enforcement scoping it out as they were being escorted out. Did you get any sense of where that was in relation to the venue where the shots were fired?
Yeah, you know, Whit, I know that there are buildings that do surround this fairgrounds area, but I don't exactly know which building in particular many of those witnesses have been referencing. It was chaos in the minutes that followed, and we did see law enforcement officials, some with canines, sniffing some areas as it was being roped off. And then, of course, we were all sort of escorted out in those moments. So I can't tell you exactly what direction that building was located in. I've heard the same exact thing from several witnesses, in fact. And something that we do know is that this area behind me, no one is going out, no one is going in. We were live on the air as Secret Service moved all of the press out of that area as well. We were told at the time that we would be let back in maybe within an hour or so to get the rest of our materials, some of our gear left inside, backpacks and personal belongings. All of that is now remaining inside as police continue to investigate what happened here hours ago, Whit.
And we know so many of those witnesses you spoke with, they're going to need time to process and deal with the trauma, what they witnessed inside the bloodshed in that event today. Rachel Scott for us. We can't thank you enough. Thank you so much. We also have been speaking with, as we noted, a number of people who were there at that Trump rally inside, describing what they saw, what they heard, and some of it very disturbing. Let's take a look.
Well, I was positioned probably about maybe 20 feet away from the president at the point in time when he was making his address. I was to the right of the stage due to me being I was a speaker at the event. So I did my speech earlier today during the pre-program, and I was a few feet from where this all occurred. We heard the shots, and I thought it was, first I thought it was fireworks because, you know, people are on edge, and any kind of loud boom you hear, you're going to think gunshots immediately, especially because of the environment of what was going on. And I turned around, and someone yelled medic, and I looked, and there was no way a medic could have got to that person in time. So I left my seat, took my tie off, I jumped over the barrier, and I ran to the individual. But when I got there, it was too late. The person was bleeding out through their head. And like I said, once again, respects to the family because this is a very tough time. But they were shot, and I tried to, you know, block the wound. I held a towel against it, and until a medical team arrived and got him out. And, you know, from there I helped the police and crowd control with getting people out of there because people were very nervous, people were very hesitant, and we had to move people fast and get them into a safe location opposite of where the shooter was at or said to be at. So I assisted with getting people down and getting people out. And I try to keep kids calm and just get people clear.
Wow, Rico. Obviously, we want to be sensitive to the victim's family. But can you tell us more about this person, where they were? Was it a man? Was it a woman?
Well, it was a male. It was a male victim. He was literally just sitting there in the stands. He had to be maybe 3 or 4 rows up from the bottom of the bleachers where everybody was sitting. And 1 second where everyone's cheering and happy and listening to what Trump's saying, and the next minute, he's gone.
Rico, did you have any training in this sort of like first aid? I mean, this is life-saving aid that you're describing here.
I mean, I'm in the military. I'm in the 171st Air Refueling Wing, and we learn first aid and self-aid buddy care and basic training. And at the point, as soon as I heard the shots and I seen and heard someone yell medic, my first instinct was, I'm trained in self-aid. I'm trained in applying a tourniquet, but I'm not trained to see someone's, what I witnessed.
I mean, nobody can be trained for that, and we're getting the sense, Rico, not just from you, but from others. I think there's going to be some serious time, some healing that's going to need to take place for the people who were there and saw all of this, and especially for you to see everything up close. And you got the sense early on that that this person was lost?
From understanding head wounds and how they operate, when I seen what I seen, I was afraid that person was lost. And reading what has been said and stated in the news so far, those are now facts, which is a shame.
Rico, I don't even know if these are the right words to ask this question, because most people have never been in this situation, but how are you processing what you saw and what you witnessed?
I mean, one can only process what happened, hopefully as slow as possible. But my worry, my heart at this point in time is not for myself, but it's for the families of the loved one.
We just saw him, Trump, duck behind the podium, and then a Secret Service pile on top of him, and we heard the shots.
More like what we heard, the bullets rattling around the grandstand. One hit the speaker tower, and then chaos broke. We hit the ground, and the police converged to the grandstands.
I watched him kind of graze his ear, and then I heard a pop-pop, and he went down, and then I heard another pop-pop, and then a Secret Service kind of came up to the stage. I mean, it was just a chaotic scene.
I could see his face. He was right there talking, having a good time. And, you heard one shot, two shot. It sounded like, bang, nothing crazy. And then you heard maybe 3 or 4 more, and that's when everyone got quiet, started panicking. Trump dropped right to the floor. I guess Secret Service jumped on top of him and shielded him. But, as soon as everyone in the crowd figured out what was going on, we all ducked, and my buddies just jumped on top of me, piled on top of me. And we had no idea what was going on. You're in total shock. You're shook, and, you can't feel your legs. But we were trying to decide if we wanted to get up and run, and we had really no idea what to do. And next thing you know, you see bullets, or you hear bullets flying, and I believe a bullet hit the hydraulic lift that was holding up the speakers, and that thing almost collapsed. There was hydraulic fluid and water spitting everywhere all over the crowd. And then before you know it, everyone just gets up and starts running. But
and
Trump
Stephen,
did stand.
Oh, forgive me. I'm sorry. There's a little bit of a delay, but on that note about everybody getting up and running, we're actually showing video that you shot on your cell phone. And this is the moment with people running out of the venue. Describe what that was like, and when were you actually able to get out?
It was pretty stressful. I'm looking around trying to make sure all my buddies who came with me were with me. And, it took probably a good 10 minutes to get out of there, to get out of the whole area. And, before you know it, there's ATVs and UTVs flying and ambulances and all that kind of stuff. And we're trying to figure out how to get out of there and get home. But we made it. And when we walked out to the road, they had, police blocking everything off, and we actually found out where the building was that the shooter was shooting from. They had it all taped off. I guess it was like an agricultural warehouse, something like that. So, it was pretty scary. It's like you're in the movies.
Stephen, forgive me again. I'm sorry. There's a little bit of a delay with the connection, but did you say that you were able to see the building that the shooter was allegedly perched on top of here? You said it was taped off by law enforcement. What did it look like?
It was like a kind of like an airplane hangar, maybe, like a warehouse for agricultural equipment, I guess. ARC, AGC, something like that on the side. But once we were out, maybe 30, 40 minutes after, they were taping it off, investigating it. They had the dogs going and all that stuff. But there was traffic jams everywhere. It was kind of hard to.
How far away was that area from where the former president was standing?
Maybe 300, 400 yards, maybe less, honestly.
And Stephen, when you hear that people who were there in the crowd with you, other bystanders, at least one, maybe more, were killed, how does that make you feel?
Honestly, still kind of numb to it. It's hard to process all this. Your heart rate is through the roof, but best wishes for their family, and they were supporting the country that they love. And in the meantime, it's definitely sad, and it's heartbreaking, honestly.
And Stephen, we've been hearing from people on both sides of the aisle, Republicans, Democrats, independent candidate, RFK Jr., and all with the same sentiment, condemning political violence, saying there's no place in this country for something like this. And I just wonder, from your perspective too, you're out there, you're exercising your right to support a candidate. What message do you have for people out there? Because the country is at this political boiling point. There's so much division and anger and hatred right now from one side and the other. What would you like to tell people?
At the end of the day, whether you're on the left, the right, the center, or you don't believe in politics at all, we all still put our pants on in the morning. We all breathe the air and go to work, and a lot of these issues, in 10 years, no one even thinks about them or cares about them. So we're all people at the end of the day, and it's not worth taking someone's life over political beliefs or whatever. It's just senseless.
Some really powerful words from so many witnesses that we spoke with throughout the course of the evening. We are getting some new information about the shooter now and the FBI's involvement in the investigation. Let's go back to our Chief Justice correspondent, Pierre Thomas, in Washington. What more are you learning, Pierre?
Well, we've just been told that the FBI director, Chris Wray, has just briefed the President of the United States, Biden. He also has briefed the National Security Advisor. We're being told now and can confirm that this dead suspect is a male. They will confirm that the dead suspect is a male. He was apparently killed. The early information is by a Secret Service counter sniper who honed in on him after the shots were fired. A Secret Service counter sniper killed the suspect. Also, we're being told that they are in the process of trying to verify the suspect's identity. They want to be 1,000% sure that they have the right name, that they can do this detailed background investigation. It is now so critical for them to understand what this is and what the motivations might be. Until you can get that name really confirmed, you can't really do the appropriate social media. I'm told that there are more than one name that is being looked at in this situation. Again, this is an all-hands-on-deck situation. The FBI director now personally involved. They have FBI agents now on the scene, I'm being told, as we speak with, going through the evidence, trying to talk to witnesses, examining the area where the shooting took place. This is now, they are the lead. This is now a national security investigation of the highest priority.
And Pierre, I realize this is a fluid situation. You may not have the answer to this question, but I think because we've been on the air for hours, it's worth circling back to it. Is the belief still that there was a single shooter, or do we even know that at this point?
The information, the evidence thus far, single shooter, firing from the rooftop, as we reported, 200 to 300 yards away, using an AR-15 style rifle. The information we can now confirm is that the dead suspect is male, according to our source. They are now in the process of trying to make sure they have the proper identity, because everything flows from that. Who is this person? And then you can begin to piece together their recent life. They need to know everything, because that affects all of the security going forward with.
And all of this with the caveat that information can change as we get more details from law enforcement. Pierre Thomas, thank you so much for that. Let's go to Aaron Katersky now, our senior investigative correspondent, because Aaron, I understand there was a photo, a potential photo of the shooter. Do we have that yet, or is there confirmation that it is in fact the shooter?
Well, the photo is from Getty Images, and law enforcement sources who have seen it tell ABC News that it does appear to be the shooter. So they are taking a look at this image, again, from Getty Images, and they are under the working suspicion that this is, in fact, going to be the shooter. Now, as Pierre notes, they still have not shared a specific identity. They undoubtedly have a name that they're working with, scouring his background, talking to any known acquaintances or family
and Aaron,
members.
I don't mean to interrupt you. I just want to make clear to our viewers, because as you started speaking, there was a different photograph, but the photograph right now that is on the screen is the photograph that you were talking about. And once again, Aaron, if you can just describe what law enforcement sources are saying about this particular picture.
Yeah, the image comes from Getty Images, and it's being scrutinized by law enforcement officials now. But their working suspicion is that this appears to be the shooter. They have not released an identity, so they don't know for sure. But that is a working belief now of law enforcement officials that this image from Getty Images does in fact capture the person who may have tried to assassinate former President Trump at his rally earlier this evening in Pennsylvania.
Aaron Katersky, thank you. We're going to leave the picture up on the screen and go back to Pierre Thomas, because Pierre, I know you've been talking to your law enforcement sources. This gives us a clearer picture of what we're dealing with. Again, we were hearing over the course through your reporting and others that the shooter was on a rooftop in a perched location 200 to 300 yards away from the venue, from the president. What does this tell us from your sources in terms of how this event played out and what this individual was able to do?
Well, what I can tell you for a fact, that image that we have up on the screen right now is being circulated by law enforcement. They have that image from Getty. They are circulating it. The operating assumption is that it was likely the shooter. This information, this image is being passed around through various law enforcement agencies for their evaluation. That image that we are looking at is an image that law enforcement has. They have control of the image. They are using the image to study it closely, obviously, and build from there. The other thing I can tell you is that this investigation now is of the highest priority. The FBI director directly involved in this case, and because from this particular shooting incident, it affects the entire threat environment, which we already said earlier was extremely elevated. People have been warning for weeks and months that the rhetoric in this country had produced a spike in political threats that no one can remember seeing in recent memory, period, full stop. The AG very concerned about it from my reporting. The FBI director speaking over and over about his concerns about this particular moment. So right now, law enforcement across the country, we have a statement from the police here in Washington, D.C. A source just reached out saying that they will elevate security in Washington based on what took place as well. So this is, again, a moment where law enforcement is reevaluating everything with.
Pierre, thank you. Let's go back to Martha Raddatz, because Martha, throughout the evening, there have been these developments as we've been getting more information. And one thing that's really stood out to me is your sources. You've been speaking with military sources who early in the evening described what they heard in those gunshots and said that this was likely someone who fired from far away. And now we're getting more pieces to the puzzle here. And I just want to get a sense of your take on what you're seeing and what we're hearing from law enforcement now.
Exactly, and you have that elevated position that the Secret Service has talked about, that it was 200 to 300 yards away, and that the shots were fired from an AR-15. That is very similar to what the military trains on, the M4, and that can be really pretty accurate, especially with the scope, even that far away. Now, one of the big questions, and Pierre, of course, knows this well, is what the Secret Service does in a situation like this before all of this event happened. Do they go around the perimeter? I spoke just a few minutes ago with a former Secret Service agent who said the USS Secret Service counter sniper team covers the rooftops. They will survey buildings from 1,000 yards in. They will position based on the stage setup. There will be response teams, Secret Service and local police that will respond based on counter sniper calls to clear rooftops or to open windows. This agent said the perimeter on outdoor events varies. Clearly, there were rooftops around 200 or 300 yards away. That will certainly be a question that they look into in this investigation about why those particular rooftops were not spotted or cleared or what exactly happened. A sniper did take out that shooter, likely a Secret Service sniper taking out that shooter, but not before we had, as the Secret Service said, 1 spectator killed and 2 left in critical condition.
And Martha, I want to hold this image on the screen right now for our viewers because, you know, as we've been getting this report now that there was a counter sniper who took out the shooter, you know, I don't have information on this photo, but it appears that this would be law enforcement taking up those positions. But Martha is still raising this massive question of how a rooftop within that perimeter that you described, you know, may have been missed.
Well, I think it is almost impossible to cover everything with. It's something the Secret Service deals with all the time, and they bring in local law enforcement to that picture specifically that says police on the vest and Secret Service. That is clearly from the counter sniper team, someone from that team, whether that's the person who took out the shooter. We don't have that information, but it certainly could have been. And that person, that counter sniper person, was probably spanning around that perimeter. Again, this former agent saying this is just something they always do. They scan as much as possible, and you know, heard those shots fired, heard multiple shots fired, and people hitting the ground. And I'm sure that sniper went into action.
Yeah, as many as 8 rounds from that AR-style rifle. Martha, thank you so much for your reporting on this. Let's bring in Don Mahalik from former Secret Service, who's a contributor now, has been speaking with us. Donald, I just want to get your sense on this information that we're getting now about the shooter on a rooftop taken out by a counter sniper. What's your take on this and how these events may have unfolded?
Well, it sounds like the Secret Service counter snipers did their job. As Martha was talking about, whenever there's an event anywhere, the counter snipers go and they do their form of an advance. That form of an advance is looking at the entire area in and around the event space and setting up almost a grid pattern so they could identify locations and locations of interest. Looking and scanning all of those potential threat areas are part of what the counter snipers do, and they work with ground teams generally made up of Secret Service agents and local law enforcement called counter sniper response teams that they can call upon to respond to a potential situation to figure out what's going on. In this situation, it sounds like some of that was working, but you know what we're going to have now is the FBI is going to do the criminal investigation piece of this to look at the shooter, his motivations, what happened. But you're also going to have the Secret Service now doing a mission insurance investigation to look at the protective venue, what protective methodologies were in place, what worked, what gaps they may have had, and what they can close down in the future.
Yeah, so much ground to cover and still so many details and questions left unanswered. Donald, thank you so much. We appreciate it. I want to go back to Aaron Katersky. Aaron, we've been, throughout the night, only had a few details about the victims in this case, confirming that at least 1 person had been killed, a bystander, and then as many as 2 critically injured. You're getting some more information about the victims now?
Yeah, we now know that 2 others are in critical condition tonight. So this has had broader ramifications. Clearly, the attempted assassination of former President Trump is rightfully getting much of the attention. But there was a bystander that was killed, according to the Secret Service, and now we know from the hospital in Western Pennsylvania that 2 others have been critically hurt after this male gunman, who has still not been identified, fired from 200 to 300 yards away from an elevated position on a rooftop adjacent to the venue. He was able to fire off about 8 shots, law enforcement sources tell us, from an AR-15 style rifle.
These are some of the images here coming in. Law enforcement outside that hospital where we're told that some of the victims are being treated. Aaron, thanks again. Let's go back to Mary Bruce at the White House. More information from President Biden.
October 2020. Yeah, what we have now learned that the president has finally connected with Donald Trump. The two men have spoken. The White House, though, remaining tight-lipped on what was actually said on that call. They have not offered any kind of readout of this discussion, but we do know that the two have connected. These are not two men who speak often or really at all. Of course, the last time they saw each other was at that debate just a few weeks ago, but very little interaction then. We do know, of course, that the president earlier in the evening expressed how grateful he was to hear that Donald Trump was safe and doing well. He, offered his prayers for the former president and his family at that time. We also now can report that the president is now he is now making his way back to Washington tonight. He will be leaving Rehoboth Beach, Delaware, where he was expected to spend the weekend. Those plans now changing. The president, we are also told, tomorrow morning here at the White House will be receiving an updated briefing from Homeland Security and law enforcement officials. The president has been being updated by his team, of course, throughout the evening, and we did hear him come out very forcefully earlier in the night and condemn this kind of violence, saying that it is simply sick, saying there's no place in America for this kind of violence. And he said it's one of the reasons why we have to unite this country. As we have said, his campaign is also trying to turn down the political temperature, the political rhetoric in this country by really hitting the pause button here. As would be expected, they are pulling down all of their political communications. They are trying to pulling down their ads as quickly as they can across the country that target Donald Trump in any kind of way, anything that is of political nature, because this is a moment that shouldn't be about politics, and that is the message that we are getting from the White House and the president's campaign. We don't know yet if, how this may affect the president's travel in the upcoming days. He's supposed to be in Texas on Monday, then on to Nevada on Tuesday and Wednesday. Of course, he has been trying to pivot a lot of the attention back and a lot of the spotlight away from questions about the president's political future and back to Donald Trump's agenda. But now all of this, everything in this race has changed because of the horrific events of today. And the president now making his way back to the White House so that he can continue to be briefed and monitor this situation in the coming hours and day. Whit.
Everything has changed. There's no question about that. Mary Bruce, thank you so much. I do want to bring in Nathan Reibner, who was one of the spectators in the audience today at that rally in Pennsylvania. Nathan, forgive me, I know you've been waiting on the phone for a while as we've been getting this new reporting, but if you can just walk us through what you witnessed firsthand.
First, I want to wish my condolences on the victims. It is mind-shattering to go to a Trump rally and encounter and endure what has happened. I was seated in the left bleacher section of the rally. I was maybe 20 feet away from one of the victims. It was, at first, the noises we heard, it sounded like a firecracker, the little things you throw at the ground, usually around July 4th. But then once once I saw the dozens of people around me started dropping, you could tell things were very different. I looked at the stage. Secret Service rushed the president. People were terrified. It was, I know it's been about, probably close to 4 hours since the shooting, but
and Ryan,
I'm at a little bit of a loss of words.
I can imagine, as anybody would be, and we can hear that emotion in your voice, and, in real time as you're trying to think through what happened hours ago. One of the things that has been very difficult to watch is, as we've played this video back, former President Trump goes down, the Secret Service pounces on him, and the one thing that you do hear in the background is you hear that screaming as members of the crowd recognize that someone has been hit. You said you were 20 feet away from one of the victims. What did you see happen to that person?
I saw that people were trying to encourage them first after everyone dropped, and after everyone at least thought that the threat was not immediate, people started moving away from the person to give them room so that they could be moved out. There was no medic nearby. You guys had Rico on earlier. I saw Rico afterwards. He had blood all over his shirt. I remember I took a photo. That's something I'm never gonna forget. I will never forget that image of him trying to help someone who was encountering the unimaginable.
What does this say to you? And I know that these thoughts are raw. This is fresh in your mind. You're seeing these images on television and now trying to compare that to what you witnessed firsthand with your own eyes. But how would you characterize this state and this country right now?
I answered an interview in late May over the Trump verdict, and right now things are deteriorating at an even more rapid rate than even most can imagine. I mean, everything we're going through with this election cycle is historic. I understand there have been some very contentious election cycles, like you look at 1968. You know, I understand that some cycles are very contentious, but this absolutely is that beyond the political impact that's going to have to help Trump. This is a damaging image to the world. The man who is currently polled to win the presidency, who I wish the best of recovery. Everyone turned on the news and saw that he had been shot in the head. It's a very scary image to send to the world. It's a very scary image to send to people. I was next to someone in the audience that was there with her young daughter. I was across the walking path of the stage, in the other bleacher section. There was a young boy who was dressed up as Trump. I can't imagine the young children that were there watching the rally and seeing that. I can't imagine people watching at home and everyone just not knowing what happened.
Yeah, the children in the crowd. We heard from a local mayor, John David Longo, who was there with his pregnant wife and described forcing her to the ground and then having to jump on top of her to shield her from potential incoming gunfire. Nathan, thank you so much for your time. We appreciate you sharing your thoughts with us tonight.
All right. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. Once again, our coverage does continue here, and I want to bring in Mark Updegrove, who's a presidential historian, joining us now. And Mark, I think it's worth picking up where Nathan, this witness, left off, talking about just the historic nature of this election cycle, unprecedented in so many different ways. This was a moment that many law enforcement officers had feared could happen. And here we are now, an investigation into the potential assassination attempt of a presidential candidate and former president. Put this into historical perspective for us. When was the last time we've seen something quite like this?
Well, first of all, I think it's a reflection of how divided and dangerous our political climate is currently. And Republican, Democrat, or Independent, we are all Americans, and this kind of political violence should have no place in American life. But unfortunately, as you are alluding to, it has in our past, in our recent past. In 2017, we had the shooting at a softball practice outside of Washington, and Representative Steve Scalise was hit. Gabby Giffords was hit in an assassination attempt in Tucson in 2011. Paul Pelosi, the husband of Nancy Pelosi, was attacked at the Pelosi home in 2022. And of course, we've seen assassination attempts and assassinations of presidents throughout our history. Most recently, the assassination attempt on President Reagan's life in 1981, just 69 days into his presidency. We have also seen the assassination attempt of a contender for the presidency, George Wallace, the governor of Alabama, was gunned down in Maryland when he was campaigning as an independent for the presidency in 1972. So unfortunately, we have a long history of political violence, which, as President Biden suggested tonight, should have no place in America.
And Mark, what about as we're looking at all these horrible images, people are trying to look for some message of hope somewhere, right? There's multiple politicians on all sides of the aisle coming out condemning the violence, saying something like this should never happen. But when these events have happened in the past, what typically happens across the country in terms of a response, in terms of a recovery? Does peace often follow or not?
I think in the immediate days, there is a call for peace and there's a reflection of comity and civility and empathy. But I think then we get into debates about whether there should be gun control or gun reform in our country. And then the political divisions, once again, are sown. If you look back at the assassination attempt on President Reagan's life, America came together, and you saw approval ratings for President Reagan soar in the wake of that. It actually helped President Reagan politically, and I think to some degree, Americans united when they saw an assassination attempt of their president. So I think it's a mixed bag. We saw with the Paul Pelosi attack that I mentioned, which is the most recent of those that I enumerated, we saw more division. We saw more ugliness particularly from the Republicans after that, really mocking what had happened to Paul Pelosi. So a mixed bag and again, I think a reflection of a very divided time in American life.
A mixed bag and certainly a test that this country will face in the days and weeks to come. Mark Updegrove, thank you so much for your perspective. We really appreciate it. I want to go back to Milwaukee because we've got our political director and bureau chief Rick Klein there, as well as our chief Washington correspondent John Karl. The two of you have had to go inside. There was some weather threatening your live locations. But again, all of this is happening right on the eve of the Republican National Convention and all of these events that were planned and the thousands of people that are expected to participate. What more are you hearing from your sources about what we can expect in the next 48 hours?
Well, the first thing we're hearing from RNC officials is that this convention is going on. I've got a statement that was just released by Reince Priebus, of course, the former chairman of the RNC, former chief of staff for Donald Trump, who is the chairman of the host committee here. He says, President Trump is in my prayers after surviving this assassination attempt. And he says, we are heartbroken that reports indicate at least one innocent person has been killed and perhaps others have been injured. This horrific violence has no place in America. But then this is the key line. Guests have already begun to arrive in Wisconsin, and we look forward to working with the Republican National Committee to welcome everyone to Milwaukee this week. This convention is proceeding as planned, and I think what you're going to see is this assassination attempt as something of a rallying cry for Republicans here. We're already seeing Republicans using the image of former President Trump with his arm raised and the blood coming down his face used as a symbol, which I think was going to be a defining symbol for this convention.
And Rick, on that point too, obviously there's the rallying cry part of it, but also the rhetoric that we've seen. Some people, condemning any sort of political violence, but then other people pointing the finger and placing blame.
Yeah, and the blame that has been directed particularly at President Biden himself has come from very high levels of the party, including Senator J.D. Vance, who in a couple of days could easily be on the ticket with Donald Trump. A lot of Republicans are saying something out loud that is right now, I think, probably not justified by any of the facts that are out there in suggesting that some of the rhetoric that Biden has used somehow contributed to this. We just don't know anything about this gunman or enough about the gunman to be able to say something like that. And we are at a time where people need to be calming the tensions that are everywhere right now because they are boiling over. And I think John's right. This is going to be a rallying cry, and you're going to hear a lot of really sharp and really maybe even dangerous rhetoric in the coming days.
Rick Klein, John Karl, stand by. We'll come back to you in just a moment, but I do want to go back to Mary Bruce at the White House. You've been in close contact with the Biden administration tonight. The president has been talking to his advisors. He was briefed by the Secret Service. He spoke with former President Donald Trump. What more are they saying tonight?
It is notable that they are not saying much more about that conversation between the president and his rival, the former president. Just the fact that they spoke, though, is really remarkable when you consider, how rare it is. I mean, before the debate last month, it had been years since the two of them had talked, and even at the debate, they barely, I don't even think you could say, exchanged niceties. The president is now making his way back here to the White House. He's going to continue to be briefed by his team. He's going to have a briefing tomorrow morning with his national security team, continuing to try and keep a close eye on all of this. The question now, one of many, is what kind of impact this is going to have on the president's campaign. We are already seeing efforts by some to sort of politicize this moment. Of course, as Rick notes, we have no idea what motivated or drove this gunman to do this, but you are already seeing many point the finger, or some pointing the finger at President Biden and his rhetoric. That is something, not surprisingly, that his campaign forcefully rejects. But how will this change the tone and tenor of this campaign in the coming days? Of course, as President Biden has been, under tremendous fire and fighting for his political future, as we have seen so many Democrats coming out and calling for him to exit this race. But for now, in this moment, the president is responding to this, as a president first, but also as a candidate. Of course, we are seeing his campaign pull down their political communications. We are seeing them pull down their political ads to focus on this moment, to try and dial down the temperature in this country and make the point that violence like this is simply unacceptable. As the president said, it is sick and has no place in America.
And John Carl, back to you there in Milwaukee with Rick Klein, because we know that the large crowds is something that Donald Trump obviously favors. It's a hallmark of his campaign. He wants to pack as many people in as possible. So I would imagine even the idea floated towards him that they would scale back the convention in any way is not something he wants. If he is able, he's going to try to be there.
I mean, I've witnessed Trump at rallies kind of call out the Secret Service and saying, why are these barricades up there? I want to let people get closer to the stage. I was at a rally in Iowa during the 2022 midterms where he actually got his staff to remove some of the barriers so more of the crowd could come closer to the stage. He's not going to want to scale back any of this thing. I was talking to one of the many people that are involved in planning here, not sure how this was going to affect the convention, as they were all scrambling to try to figure out what actually happened today and what the former president's condition is. But this person said to me, my assumption is not just that this convention will continue as planned, but this convention will continue with a vengeance, with a new energy, using this attempted assassination as a rallying cry, as a symbol, and certainly not as a reason to scale back any of the events here in the convention. Of course, the Secret Service is going to have other concerns. Law enforcement here is going to have other concerns about keeping this place secured. But as you and I talked about earlier, Whit, we are in one of the most secure places in the country right now. I mean, they've already erected barricades for blocks all around this convention center. There is already a massive security presence in the city of Milwaukee. It certainly isn't going to be scaled back. If anything, it's going to be ramped up.
And Rick, you and I were talking days earlier just about this event in Pennsylvania and how significant it could be. All eyes were on this event. There was, as names were being thrown out there for potential running mates, there was the possibility of at least a hint or a tease or maybe even an announcement. What does this do now to this Veep stakes, the potential running mates? And clearly some of them are out there on Twitter or X and making comments in support of the former president. Do you think this changes anything? Were any of them likely working to the last possible minute to get the job?
Yeah, we reported just hours before this rally in Pennsylvania that 3 finalists met with Donald Trump privately at Mar-a-Lago in the last couple of days. Somehow they avoided reporters who were tracking the movements of these individuals. We're talking about Senator J.D. Vance, Senator Marco Rubio, and the North Dakota Governor Doug Burgum. All 3 met with Donald Trump in a very small setting, maybe even as one-on-one type setting for the first time in this process. He's talked to them informally, but to be involved in the interviews, he was clearly getting getting close to making that decision. He was teasing the possibility in fundraising appeals and in postings and in interviews that this would be the event. This would be the time that he actually announces his vice presidential pick. The timing would sort of fit going into the convention. We find out that he never had those plans, and he would hope to do this as sort of a big reveal on Monday at the convention. I think all the plans have to be a little bit up in the air. I would even say that if he hadn't made up his decision before, or up his mind before, it may be that there's other factors that he is now considering, including how they're responding to this event that has upended so much about politics and so much about American political discourse in the last few hours.
It sure
In fact,
has.
Rick, I had actually heard from one of the former president's advisors about an hour before this rally was to get underway. We had received, and we've been going back and forth, are they going to announce it, are they not? We had earlier today, we were told, no, he's not going to announce it at the event. But just about, less than an hour before the event, I got a call like, hey, you better be ready. We're hearing that, he may just do it. So, there was a heck of a lot of anticipation at this event, although he didn't have the typical entourage with him of other officials, because so many people have already come to Milwaukee. We're already en route to Milwaukee. So a heck of a lot of the spotlight was very bright on that event in Pennsylvania today.
The spotlight bright on the event, and sadly, just a horrific scene that played out. And the former president now injured and recovering the slight injury, as he described, to the top of his ear following that attempted assassination. John and Rick, thank you. I want to go back to Martha Raddatz, because, Martha, you've been following this very closely, talking to some of your sources, including military sources who've been sort of analyzing some of this data and information as it's been coming in. What more are you learning tonight?
Well, basically what they thought in the very beginning seems to have happened, that this was off-site, that it was not in a secure area. It was off 200, 300 yards away from the actual event, away from Donald Trump. But the shooter still managed to fire 8 rounds from an AR-15. I think about that crowd, and that crowd was there for a political event. The campaign will surely go on. The election will surely go on. But no one will forget this day. We have to remember that this is a day where someone tried to assassinate a former president and a presidential candidate. And in that assassination attempt, killed one of those supporters at that political rally and left 2 others in critical condition, according to the Secret Service. So I think that is really what we have to think about tonight. The campaign will go on. Donald Trump made that very clear, just putting that fist up. It looks to me like he was saying, fight, fight, as he was helped off the stage there. He will certainly, as John and Rick said, talk about that this week. They will talk about this at the RNC, but hovering over all of this is, who is that suspect? What motivated him? Why would he take action like that? And because that suspect is dead, you can imagine that there will be conspiracy theories for a very long time, no matter what they find out and prove.
Yeah, sadly, there's no question about that. Martha Raddatz, thank you. And just to point out to our viewers, some of this video that you're seeing, these are new aerials from our affiliate there that has been following this scene, this chopper video. This is overlooking the area off in the distance. There was a wider shot that you could see the American flag that was hanging. There it is. That was the venue inside. But again, law enforcement saying that this shooter was perched up on one of those rooftops about 200 to 300 yards away. And now for the first time, it's kind of coming into a clearer picture that just how much space there was. There are a number of buildings there where he could have been. Once again, we're still just getting these details coming in about the investigation and attempted assassination of the former President Trump. Before we go, though, we do have a recap of all the troubling developments on this historic day. ABC's Rachel Scott was there at the rally and has been speaking with eyewitnesses who were there, too.
This is the shocking moment. Chaos erupted at Donald Trump's rally in Butler, Pennsylvania.
If you want to really see something that said, take a look at what happened.
You can hear several pops and see the former president grabbing his ear, ducking for cover behind the podium. Secret Service agents rushing the stage, surrounding Trump, shielding him, taking him down to the ground. The screaming crowd looking on in horror. A short time later, agents carefully lifting the former president up.
I got you, sir. I got you, sir. Let me get my shoes, sir. Hold on, your head is bloody.
Blood clearly seen on his face, Trump pumping his fist. Agents whisking the former president off the stage, down the stairs to a waiting armored SUV, rushing him to a local medical center.
We heard what we appeared to be gunfire coming. The former president was rushed off the stage. Right now, we're at Secret Service. He's being escorted into his vehicle. This was a chaotic moment that just played out right here in Pennsylvania. People running and rushing to the ground as they heard those apparent shots fired.
Then pandemonium, thousands of people running for cover.
Unbelievable.
Tonight, the Trump campaign releasing a statement saying the former president is fine and being checked out at a local medical facility. Donald Trump Jr. telling ABC News he spoke to his father, who remains in the hospital, and described Trump as in good spirits, saying he remains under observations.
Just hours ago, this area was lined with Trump supporters. They entered that tent right there to be screened by Secret Service, going through metal detectors, their belongings detected. Now, this is the space where you have Trump supporters that are leaving, panicked and confused, as Secret Service agents rush us out of this area and back to our cars.
Tonight, the crowd still in disbelief.
Tell me what you saw and what you heard. You said that you heard the popping sounds and you got down?
Sounds. At first you think like maybe firecrackers, but it continued, and then somebody yelled, "Get down." We got down, and we huddled and we started praying.
Tonight, local officials telling ABC News those sounds were in fact gunshots. Live rounds fired from a rooftop adjacent to the venue outside the security perimeter. Tonight, law enforcement recovering an AR-style rifle. This is being investigated as an attempted assassination. And tonight, the local district attorney telling ABC News at least one person is dead and the shooter is dead as well. A law enforcement official briefed on the investigation tells us this image is believed to show the suspected gunman on the roof. Tonight, President Biden addressing the nation.
I have tried to get a hold of Donald. He's with his doctors. Apparently he's doing well. I plan on talking to him shortly, I hope, when I get back to the telephone. Look, there's no place in America for this kind of violence. It's sick. It's sick. It's one of the reasons why we have to unite this country. We cannot allow for this to be happening. We cannot be like this. We cannot condone this. But the idea that there's political violence or violence in America like this is just unheard of. It's just not appropriate. And everybody must condemn it.
And moments ago, former President Donald Trump posting on Truth Social, thanking the Secret Service, saying, "I want to extend my condolences to the family of the person at the rally who was killed, and also to the family of another person who was badly injured. It is incredible that such an act could take place in our country. I was shot with a bullet that pierced the upper part of my right ear. I knew immediately that something was wrong and that I heard a whizzing sound, shots, and immediately felt the bullet ripping through the skin. Much bleeding took place, so I realized then what was happening. God bless America."
And Rachel Scott is back with us now. She was there at that rally in the beginning. She is still there now. Rachel, you've talked to a number of witnesses, but I also wonder, have you been in touch with the Trump campaign, some of the officials that you were likely speaking with who were there at the event, who then fled with the president? Are they revealing anything else about what happened?
Yeah, there is a sense of shock among Trump officials as well. They were inside of this rally along with us and the former president's supporters, members of the press. They were there too, also diving for cover, many of the former president's aides, when we heard those gunshots erupt and the panic that set in and the chaos that occurred just right after that. Here now, right behind me, is this active crime scene that you have here. And there were a number of people that were here. Their belongings are left inside. It was sort of this moment where you took what you could and you just sort of raced out. There were some people running out. There were some people that had to be pushed out by Secret Service. They were told to just take what you can, leave everything else. There were probably about a dozen people that were lined up here at these gates behind me asking law enforcement when they'll be able to get back in. They were just told that they would not have access to their personal belongings for some time, maybe a couple hours, maybe a day. There are several people here who actually have their keys to their cars. They can't drive home at this point. Obviously, this is an active crime scene that's occurring behind me here tonight. And still you have this American flag that's hanging over that crime scene, an attempted assassination of a former president, a Republican nominee in this race. It is an unprecedented twist to an already historic campaign with.
Rachel Scott, stand by. Just reminding our viewers who are tuning in right now as we hit the top of the hour, it is just past 11 o'clock in the east, 8 o'clock in the west. We've been on this for hours now. I'm Whit Johnson in New York, following the major developments. Former President Donald Trump in an attempted assassination at one of his events in Butler, Pennsylvania. He was there for a rally, a political rally. You see the events here. There were the popping sounds in the crowd, the former president reaching for his right ear before going down to the deck right there on the stage. The Secret Service surrounding the former president, jumping on him to protect him, forming somewhat of a human shield there before eventually bringing former President Trump back to his feet and escorting him off the stage. You can also hear the screams from the crowd because, as we know now, that there was a shooter who was perched on a rooftop, fired up to 8 shots from an AR-style rifle, and at least one spectator, one person in the stands there, was killed. We know that 2 others were taken in critical condition to a nearby hospital. The former president was also escorted, as you can see in some of these images. Once they got him back to his feet, they escorted him off the stage. And in some of the pictures, you can see that blood trickling down the right side of his face. The crowd responding to Trump when he got back to his feet and started cheering. The former president then walking off with the Secret Service, as you see here, ultimately into a car, being escorted off to a nearby hospital. We're told by family that the president is doing fine tonight, that he did suffer a minor injury as a bullet passed through the top of his right ear. But the president and his family, they've been asking for prayers for the victims who were killed, and also thanking the Secret Service for their quick actions in this assassination attempt. We also know that the Secret Service is involved in the investigation. The FBI now leading the investigation. We've been getting information about the shooter. They have confirmed that it's a man. They believe at this point it's a lone suspect. No indication that anybody else was involved, but that man was perched on a rooftop some 200 to 300 yards away from that venue, once again with an AR-style rifle. We're going to bring in some of our other correspondents and contributors here in just a moment. Forgive me, I'm getting instructions. I can't do that. You've got to keep moving it forward. Okay. We've been speaking with eyewitnesses all day. Let's go ahead and listen.
Tell me what you saw and what you heard. You said that you heard the popping sounds and you got down?
Sounds. At first you think like maybe firecrackers, but it continued, and then somebody yelled, "Get down." We got down, and we huddled and we started praying. And we just started praying, and thank God, a little while later, we got up. When we saw other people get up, we saw Trump get up, raise his fist like I'm okay, and we kept praying.
I felt really bad. I'm worried about our grandchildren. What kind of life are they going to have if this goes on, if people don't have the right to say what they want?
You told me that you were near the very front. You weren't very far.
No, we were like from here to where that thing is.
And you got down, you said you got down immediately?
Yeah. Yeah, everybody yelled, "Get down." My daughter-in-law, Lisa, she said for us to hurry up and get down.
Well, I mean, I saw all the Secret Service kind of cover Trump. They did a really good job about that, making sure he was protected, telling everyone to get down. So I think they did take a good care of making sure everyone was understanding what was going on and being serious but not freaking everybody out.
What was your initial reaction when you heard those popping noises?
To get down, yeah. So I actually my boyfriend pushed me on the ground and went on top of me, which was really nice. But I think a lot of people were a little too shocked to understand what was going on originally, for sure. But I think everyone listened pretty well, and it was handled pretty well.
Did you see some of that commotion that was playing out on the other side of the bleacher, where we saw law enforcement agents sort of swarm around another individual, or did you ultimately just rush out?
No, we were there for a minute because they did tell us to go back down again just in case. I think that was good because it helped calm people down. But I think one of the stands that I was next to, they did carry out a man, and there was another one that might have been injured. I'm not 100% sure, but definitely one at least. And on the other stand on the other side, because I was on the right, on the left, there were a bunch of men in uniform surrounding someone. So that was interesting to see.
You said that you were very impressed by the speed in which Secret Service was able to
get on that stage within seconds of all of us hearing those popping sounds.
Yeah, absolutely. They did a great job. I definitely felt protected in the situation. The sniper was on it, watching on guard. Everyone on the scene did a great job. I mean, of course, it was nerve-wracking in the moment, but I never felt like I was in danger, which was cool. They were on the president, which I'm very thankful of, and they did a great job protecting him and getting him out as quick as possible. He is doing good, which is good. Yeah.
I'm the Republican nominee for the Senate in Pennsylvania. I was in the front row, and President Trump had just announced me and said he was going to have me come up on the stage, and said, well, wait a minute. And then there were a number of shots. I think probably 7 or 8 shots. It wasn't clear whether they would come from one place or 2 places. At least I couldn't tell. And immediately there was a swarm of Secret Service officers that got on top of, knocked down President Trump and got on top of him. And then he stood back up, and you sort of saw this fist come out, sort of defiant that it looked like he was okay, but you couldn't tell for sure. It looked like there was some blood, but it wasn't obvious. And then the entire crowd went to the ground because we weren't sure whether the shots were done. And then unfortunately, over my shoulder, someone had clearly been hit. I was on the ground, and up in the bleachers, probably 3 or 4 bleachers behind me, it looked like there was a man who was severely injured. There was a lot of blood, and his people around him were trying to administer first aid. And then the police, some police officers came in and carried him out, and presumably took him to get first aid. That's really all I could see. I don't know if there were other people injured, and I don't know if there was anybody apprehended, because as you might imagine, once that happened, the crowd was very chaotic, and it was very hard to know what was going on. And we're still there at the rally, just sitting trying to get out because the traffic is so backed up.
And Dave, your account seems to confirm some of this reporting that we're getting about a shooter and potential bystanders who were hurt. Just talk more about your initial reaction. I mean, seeing this, you're running for Senate in the state of Pennsylvania. You're about to walk up on the stage. You're getting introduced by the former president, and then you hear these shots ring out and the chaos in the crowd. What was going through your mind in that moment?
Well, it takes a minute to process. People started to panic all around. You could feel, people were very scared, and so, everybody just dropped to the ground. And it felt very obvious that the president was under assault, and very much at risk. And it wasn't clear that he was okay to begin with. And then, once it started to sink in, you're thinking, are there still shooters out there? Are they going to target other people? And it's just like these, situations. I was in the military previously. You realize over time that the facts start to come together. So you got to be careful not to draw too many conclusions early on. But I think what we all felt was a sense of, oh my Lord, everybody's in danger because there's clearly a shooter, at least one shooter in the crowd, and maybe more. And really, I think scary for everybody who was there. And shocking, even more than scary, just shocking, because you were in the middle of this rally, and it was kind of fun, and people were enthusiastic, and all of a sudden it was turned upside down.
What does this say to you about our state of division and the politics in this country right now?
Well, I don't want to draw any conclusions before I know more about it, but obviously it's if you're a public official, if you're a presidential candidate, and your safety's at risk, that's scary for all of us, no matter what party you're in. And so I think it's a moment to take stock. And you had 15,000. It seemed it was a huge crowd. I was told by the law enforcement people there are 15,000 people who were enthusiastically supporting their candidate, and all of a sudden, the former president, his life is at risk, and what were peaceful people in the audience are wounded, potentially, fatally, I mean, that's unacceptable, and it's not a matter of party. That's just unacceptable in our great country.
I do want to go to Leonard Verdetto, who is an eyewitness who was there at the rally today. He's joining us now on the phone. Leonard, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you, sir. How you doing? Thanks for having me on.
Absolutely, Leonard. We're so grateful that you are okay. Can you just walk us through what happened and what you saw?
Sure, absolutely. So everybody was excited to see the former president coming out. You know, we were all, excited, and we were all happy. We were all joyful. We were all there for each other. And then the former president was giving his speech. Then moments later, there was some, popping sounds that were going off. So there were about maybe 6 or 7 to 8 shots that were happening. None of us really registered at the time, but then all people were saying,
Good evening.
Get down.
Thank you for joining us. We are watching a special report for ABC. We're now going to turn to Newswatch 16 at 11. I'm Chelsea Strube. As you've been hearing all evening, former President Donald Trump was swarmed by Secret Service agents and rushed off the stage after shots were fired during a campaign rally in Butler County earlier today. The incident is being investigated as a possible assassination attempt.